Hello, welcome to All Politics Are Local. We are on today. We today is October 6th, 2023. We have a great show that's lined up today. We have coming on in this hour. This entire show is dedicated to the program that's taking place at Science Park High School tomorrow, right? Like we're in Newark, right? And tomorrow is a day of unity. It's a tribute to Amiri Baraka. Amiri Baraka, those you know, the poet, playwright, activist, was obviously very influential to the city of Newark, and most things that have happened in the last 50 years have been very much influenced by the work that Amiri Baraka did, right? The activism that he did, his poetry, the way of looking at the world, really, right? Like Amiri Baraka was a founder of the Black Arts Movement, right? He was someone who looked at the world and said, hey, we need to look at it in a different way. We need to look at white supremacy. We need to look at colonialism. We need to look at these things that affect everything. They affect our aesthetics, the way we look at beauty, the way they look at everything. And we need to do something a little different, right? We need to really, really just look at the world in a different way. And activist, because his activism was the same way, right? When you look at a lot of the early activism that he did, a lot of that activism was rooted in really, for me, right, the most radical concept is looking at self-determination in ways for Black people, because it's like when you hear the ideas and when you talk about the ideas, it doesn't seem radical, right? Like Black people should control their communities, control what happens, right? And all this is only radical because he was talking about it in the context of Black people. So we're actually live from where the event's going to be held tomorrow. Tomorrow's the Day of Unity. Ed Riley came on, and he's in the auditorium of Science Park High School. I'm a debate coach and teacher. I'm actually in my classroom at Science Park High School, where this takes place. And it's going to be an incredible lineup for tomorrow. So tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., there's going to be a series of panels. And Ed, talk about this Day of Unity, this tribute to Amiri Baraka on his birthday, right?
Absolutely.
So talk. What is the program about? Like the tribute to the legacy of Amiri Baraka and the Black Political Convention. You've been putting this together for a long time, not just this program, but a series of programs that are commemorating the 50th anniversary of the Black Political Convention in Gary, Indiana, that Amiri Baraka really helped lead, because post-civil rights, it's like, where do we go from here? When Martin Luther King asked that question, Amiri Baraka seemed to have taken that seriously. Like, where do we go from here? And gathered Black people from across the country together to try to answer that question, right? So what's going on tomorrow, and what have you been working on with the 50th anniversary of the Black Political Convention in Gary, Indiana?
Well, I think that what's most important that's going to take place here tomorrow is that we're going to, and we're calling this on the road to the convention. And what's beautiful is that we're going to have a series of panels where folks are going to talk about, in the first panel, they're going to talk about, police violence. And so we'll get a chance to see some of the families and some of the victims of police brutality will be with us tomorrow. Then, of course, we're going to, have a panel where we're going to talk about 50 years of hip hop. And then we'll have your panel, of course, on education, which everyone is really, really excited about. There are going to be some dynamite people on that panel, and I think it's going to be fabulous. So, you talk about, 52 years after 1972, and you look at everything that's going on in the country with, everything that Black folks fought for in the civil rights movement being dialed back. This couldn't be more important to begin to have these kind of conversations, talk about, especially if you talk about education with everything going on in Florida,
Right.
right? And so, hopefully you all bring that up tomorrow as you all are talking about, you know, uh, uh, us fighting for the right just to be able to teach Black history. And you already know, Jonathan, Amiri Baraka is one of the ones that was taken out of the curriculum, in particular in Florida.
Right, right. Amir Baraka was actually removed from the AP history curriculum when they were putting it
Yeah,
together. And it's just wild because, like, how can you study the Black Arts Movement? How can you study hip hop or understand hip hop without understanding the Black Arts Movement? Right?
right,
I think you can. And I don't. And how can you understand the Black Arts Movement without Amir Baraka? I don't think you can do it. Right? I
right.
don't think you can do it credibly. And let's. I'm going to roll back to some of these panels because this is going to be really great tomorrow.
Hmm.
The first panel is really about reimagining public safety and police brutality. So, for a lot of people who are listening, this is about people who have been pushing solutions to problems, right? Like the whole history of the Black Political Convention wasn't that people came together and been like, hey, here's just the problems, because we know what the problems are, right? We've known what the problems are, but we're going to be talking to people who've been pushing solutions to these problems.
Right,
And the cool thing about the first panel, reimagining public safety and dealing with police brutality, is because in Newark, we are like literally on the cutting edge in the city and
yeah,
dealing with violence prevention and
yeah,
dealing with things that around the country, like they're not even, many places aren't even having the conversation. And I think that what Newark is doing is so ahead that literally they're in talk, like the federal government, they're in talks with the people who are doing stuff work on the ground in Newark are talking to the White House about how to fund a lot of these successful programs, right? The people who are on the ground here are trying to really show what we're doing in Newark
that's
to
right.
so that other people can follow. And that's more like, and for people who don't know, the phrase defund the police was not something that like uh, the mayor like used, right? Did not use that term. In Newark, they didn't use that term, but they were doing certain things like taking some money from the police budget to
Right,
use in the Office of Violence Prevention, right? And they were looking at, and the key of this is that they have to reimagine what it means to be safe and why. Because a lot of the debates that were taking place around that were dealing with failure of policing, heavy police brutality, the fact that like people didn't feel safe around policing in our communities, right? So how do you deal with that when Black parents always have to have their talks with their kids, specifically their sons, about how to deal with police, right? When you're pulled over, every encounter can be something of death, right? So how do you reimagine what public safety is? And I think that having that Office of Violence Prevention and the ways in which they targeted violence, not just as public safety, but public health, right? And I think a lot of this starts with a lot of the activism that Keesha Eure, who will be on hopefully shortly, and will be on the panel, along with Zelia Mani, Amber Sherman, Minister Abdul Haq Mohammed, Erica Ford, Kalisha Wingfield Hill, and A.T. Mitchell. These are all people who are actually involved in the solutions to the problem, right? Like one of the things that happened in Newark at some point, we had the lowest murder rate in over 50 years, right? That happened, right? Now there's not saying Newark's a panacea, like it's not a panacea, right? Like not saying that Newark does not have violence. Clearly it does. But there were things that have worked so that Newark is actually ahead of many other cities in what they're doing. I see these panels that are going on about increases in crime, right? And their solutions are just more police. But the type of thinking that they had in Newark is that police don't prevent crime. They deal with it after the fact, right? Uh, and when you're dealing with actual violence prevention, then you have things like violence interrupters. Then you have things like programs that intervene in the actual reason why you actually have certain crimes in the begin with, right? Whether it be safe passages from school and getting more people in the community, whether it be the violence interrupters that literally talk to people who are about to commit violence and talk them out of it. People who have, and this works. I mean, they can literally quantify the lives that they save based on the conversations that they have with people, the interventions in hospitals. If someone is shot, if someone is hurt in a hospital, often the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, has looked at violence as the way that it spreads is it spreads like a disease, right? Because violence is communicable, right? Like the things that I keep getting from these conversations that we're having with Keesha Eure, that we have with violence disruptors from Chicago, that we have with people who are working in Newark, is that there are things that they do to bring together civic organizations to people within the community to be able to deal with some of those effects that have, so that people within our community have resources, and that leads to less violence. Like everything from like the Amiri Baraka Center that deals with domestic violence and is a place where people can actually get counseling and people can go for help, right? And opening a center like that because it's incredibly important, right? Like October, I believe, is one of those things that we deal with in October is domestic violence, is this interpersonal violence, right? That happens when in terms of personal relationships, and having resources on the ground to be able to deal with that is great. Now these are that tomorrow. Like I don't, I'm a debate coach. I'm a teacher. I'm just a geek who likes to hear about solutions to problems. Right. That's part of the thing that we do. What I teach, right? I teach kids how to deal with solutions to problems, to research solutions to problems. So, and Ed knows, right? Like my whole involvement, even in this talk show, is that I get access to people who are actually solving problems and
Right.
ask how they do it, right? So I love all these conversations because it's one thing to just complain about stuff, right? Everybody can complain, but it's another thing to hear about what's actually going on in the community to actually address these issues and successfully address these issues to the point where the rest of the country is looking at the things that Newark does, or at least should be, right? It's interesting because the federal government's actually ahead of the media on this, right? Like, as in, Newark is in talks with the Biden administration about like their activists that they look at to try to model certain things that work, certain things that should be funded. Like that's a conversation that's happening now between Newark, other places around the country that are doing this, and the federal government that doesn't appear in media because the media is talking about rising crime. They're just talking about get tough policies, right? Like you hear about that, and they're just these policies of we need more funding for police. And I'm like, they have literally not listened to anything that people on the ground have been doing for violence prevention in the last 3 years. It's like that conversation didn't exist, and they're pushing the same type of militaristic solutions that didn't work in the past, right? Like it's not like they're peddling solutions that work. Like maybe you just want certain people to get paid, maybe you just want certain vendors to get paid. I don't know, but it's not like you're peddling things that have worked before. You're peddling things that have not worked, that have created a lot of distress within communities, that led to like a prison industrial complex that was so bad that, like in 2015, the New York Times reported that one in 5 Black males was involved, had disappeared from society based on the criminal justice system, right? Like disappeared from society based on you either being incarcerated or you're not being able to access to jobs once you're let free because you're a felon, right? So you have like what Michelle Alexander talked about in 2010 as the new Jim Crow, and so it's like they've been years before the conversation that's going to happen tomorrow. So Ed, question are we going to be live streaming the conference?
Yep. So tomorrow, starting at 10 o'clock, all of the panels are going to be live streamed on MBPC Network on YouTube. So folks can go there and subscribe right now, and they will get an alert when we go live tomorrow. That's NBPC Network on YouTube.
And say that again.
N as in Nancy, B as in boy, P as in Paul, C as in cat. Network. NBPC Network, right? On YouTube. You can subscribe, and when we go live, you'll get a notice that we're live. And we'll be live all day.
All right, cool. And it's live all day. And it's I just put it in the NBPC network on YouTube,
Yep.
and that's going to be happening all day. Cool.
All day.
So the next one that's going to be up is, and by the way, they're going to be someone's going to be here from each of the panels to talk about what we're working on, right? So at 6:30, we're going to have Leah Graham on, and she's a teacher and an organizer of a freedom school, and works part time at a freedom school, and she will talk about what that means in the context of now. And there are going to be a lot of other educators who are going to be there tomorrow on the education panel. We're going to have Principal Baruti Kafile, who trains teachers around the country about like issues of race, Black males, having equity, having a way of teaching our history, and so we're always honored to have him on. He's one of the biggest supporters of this program, and just a shout out to him. And we're glad he will be there tomorrow. The mayor is going to be on that panel. The mayor, Raz Baraka, is a principal, right? And he was a principal who dealt with the global village, right? Like that was in Newark. That was a solution to a problem of education. And I always said, right, that the mayor of Newark, when he was and he was working with that global village, they really did education reform for real, right? They weren't trying to switch students out. They weren't trying to like cherry pick students. They were actually dealing with reform, right? Like everybody, because they were creating a community within the city that would support people. And when he was at Central, these test scores, because of what he did in terms of just inspiring teachers, creating community, getting resources for parents, right? Getting a lot of resources for kids in the school itself, and dealing with the needs that go beyond the school day, but dealing with that in the school and in terms of creating this global village. His test scores rose in each of the categories in ways that were unprecedented, so much so, and people don't really talk about this much. The state director of education at the time, Chris Cerf, accused our mayor when he was a principal of cheating on the scores, right? And he had to back it down and had to apologize when he came and actually saw what was going on, right? And these are people who have solutions that actually worked, right? We also have Stephanie James Harris, who also does, who is huge in terms of the Amistad project, the Amistad law, and enforcing the Amistad law in New Jersey. That was a law basically saying that you are obligated, that you have to teach education, right? Like that you have to teach Black history in our schools. Hey, Zayid, man, how are you?
Mic check. Y'all all right?
Oh, we're good. We're good.
Yeah.
And so now, Zayid, we had just talked about the first panel, right? Like with the first panel, that's going to be on reimagining public safety. Now, I tried to do it justice, but I was never one of the people on the ground, right? Like, as I said, I'm a debate coach. I'm a geek. I like people who have solutions to ideas, right? So I like talking to people who actually are on the ground and actually solving these problems. And can you just break down, and I think you could do this even better than much better than I can, how the panel is looking at solutions to the problem of violence and solutions to the problem of police brutality, and what has happened in Newark in order to do that. I know that you work very closely with this every single day. Break this down for us. Like, what's this going to be about? What's going to talk about?
And full disclosure, Zayid is actually going to be moderating that panel.
Oh yeah, Zayid, you're going to be moderating this panel tomorrow. Talk to us about what to expect from the panel tomorrow.
Well, first, thank you for having me on your show.
On your show. Wow.
That's funny. That's funny.
Wow.
It's not like you introduced me like a baguette.
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah. Zayid is one of our co-producers. He's here all the time. It's just I was so lonely here. I was like, And I'm like, I can't do
I
these
had a
subjects
feeling,
justice as you.
the child was going to
You
be
do these
I
sub,
know how
you do
that goes.
this, right? You do this much more justice than I do, right? Like this is what
And
we deal with
just
every
to the
day.
question, right? And very directly, and of course we expand on it as we see fit, right? Tomorrow's conversation is as much about a bridge of the two streams. What do I mean? We have our stream of protests around the question of police brutality because of the problem that it is. But often we have folks who are doing that work who do not necessarily uh, do or are part of the work that we call the reimagining of public safety. And at the heart of the reimagining of public safety is community-based public safety. And at the very core of that, in the interest of checking this whole question of the violence that plagues all of our communities, is community-based violence intervention and prevention, right? And so we're actually trying to bridge parties who are on the fronts of both of those streams. Now, and I'll explain. I'll illustrate it this way.
Right. Yes.
Last year, on the anniversary of the Newark uprising, the People's Organization for Progress always does a march, to acknowledge, to remember and observe that uprising and all those lives that were lost, right? And we
In
marched
1967, right?
1967. We marched to the first precinct and marched back from Springfield Avenue, from the Memorial Monument on Springfield Avenue. What they did not realize is that First Precinct is now the Office of Violence Prevention and Trauma Recovery, and it's supposed to be transformed into a community-based museum that addresses all of that history, right? So the whole script has been flipped in terms of that being once upon a time a torture chamber, now being a place where people can get real help when they need it.
And
right?
just for context, I believe that was the place where Amiri Baraka himself was taken and almost beaten to death, right? The story that we've heard was the precinct, right?
I don't know if he was taken there, right?
Okay.
Because they were folks was all over, and they were like hundreds to, almost several thousand folks that got arrested over those several days. But
True, because I remember the
Green
story
was on Springfield Avenue when he was attacked. So
right.
I don't know the reason they took him to. They may have moved him.
That's true. I think they might have been talking about being moved to place.
Yeah.
But literally, the story that I thought was fascinating is that he literally, like, I think it was Allen Ginsberg and Sartre, right?
Yes.
The internationally known writers had to literally make calls internationally to be like, hey, you've got an international playwright that you, United States, are about to murder. Like, y'all need to stop because we know who you are. We know where he is. Where is he, right? And I believe that we've had a series of interviews where they talked about this, and they talked about like him that intervention, right? Potentially saved his life, right, during the Newark uprisings.
It was a big deal.
Through all of this, it has been a big, huge deal. So finish talking about that.
Now, where I was going with the story is that my pop folks didn't understand that, right? We see your daughter. How you doing? We're gonna bring you in here in this conversation in a minute. We're trying to set the stage for you, right? They didn't understand it. They were just ready to come and walk back, and they had food and whatnot. They were ready to receive them, right? Because it is a place now where people can be received, right? So there's a gap, The protest folks and the old line protest folks do not understand what young folks have done to bring down the violence in the spaces that we have created, so people can, really get the help they need and be a part of the healing and the transforming of our community that we need. The community-based violence intervention as we know it is based on, and see, tomorrow is not just Amiri's birthday. It's also Elijah Muhammad's birthday. And why is that important? Right? Elijah Muhammad, was coming out of prison as a young man named Detroit Red was going into prison. And when this Detroit Red came out of prison and wound up in the Detroit mosque with his brothers, right? He saw that, he had this great wise teacher, with all this powerful teachings and this discipline and this brotherhood, and one but 20 people in the building. He couldn't understand that. And the messenger spent a little time with that young man and cut him loose on the streets. And somehow at some point he got him a red or a blue Oldsmobile and drove that thing all over the country, building the Nation of Islam, becoming the father of what we call the credible messenger concept, right? Someone who has been justice impacted, right? Someone who was formerly, in the justice system by virtue of some harm that they were creating and doing by virtue of being in that kind of life, coming out and coming back into their community to address those harms and to be a messenger to other folks who are in that harming space to not do that, right? And so that's the engine that drives community-based violence intervention. And what does that mean for Newark, right? In the several years that we've had that in play, we were shutting down streets over violence in this community. Also 155 street where bodies were dropping every week. It was a mess, right? We now have violent crime down to a 60-year low in Newark, and that was not with the police. That's what our folks in the community who have been trained by, and then there's a Panther wrinkle of this too, right? Now I ain't just talking about my kids who were in the new Black Panther Party who represented the core of what was the Newark Anti-Violence Community Coalition. There are people who train folks how to do interventions, how to do high-risk interventions and whatnot. It's a skill. You just can't say, yo, chill. That don't work on the street. You walk into a bullet, and then you'll be chilled for the rest of your life. There's a skill into negotiating, and bringing down tensions on the street. Our best trainer in that work is an old Panther by the name of Akil Bashir. A lot of folks don't know that. Right. And so this is some, layered work that has gotten results, particularly good results. And no, we ain't all the way home. We got a long way to go on both sides of this question. Right. But what we have done is something we ought to claim. Other communities are trying to figure it out. And it's important that other communities figure out. The main thing is that you got to have buy-in from both political leadership and where possible from police leadership. And that's the tough one. Tell no lies, claim no easy victories. That's the tough one. And it's always going to be tough just by virtue of the baggage of what policing has been in this country since its inception coming out of the slave trade. And we need to have no illusions about that. But we have broken some serious ground in this town that we need to continue to build on. Okay.
All right, that's excellent, right? And we so I want to bring in the education piece, and we're going to come back. We're going to go back and forth within this conversation, but I also want to bring in the because you mentioned a lot of history, Zayid, right? And we are honored to have Ceelea Graham on, who works at a freedom school in South Orange Maplewood, in the South Orange Maplewood district. And it is important that people understand that how do you have a connection to even teach the next generation when you have this issue, right? Like of history not being taught, right? When you have this issue of history not even being a thing. What is the Freedom School? Where do you work? What do you do? Why is it important when we
Let me help set up an intro in this way, Jonathan, right?
All right, yes.
Because it's the Freedom School co-founder is like a little brother to me, and he's a beloved Panther Cub, right? And that's Mr. T.J. Whitaker, right? And I want you to understand that this particular Freedom School is unique in that it is a concept where students, teachers, and parents together make up the Freedom School. Usually Freedom Schools is geared towards young people, right? But this particular Freedom School is a network of Black parents, students, and teachers trying to make sure their kids get what they need in this self-described liberal progressive community, when we know there's some serious racial baggage with these liberals, even in the wood, that is Maplewood. So I wanted to set her up that way. Ceelea, good to have you with us, daughter. Right? Now you can answer Jonathan's question.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So my day job is in a K-12, quote unquote, regular public school, but I do work with the MAPSO Freedom School. And so, yeah, we do focus on youth, but we also make sure that we work with fellow educators as well, because our fellow educators in the school system, I work in the same district as TJ Whitaker. We need to make sure that they're serving our kids too. So we want to provide space for youth. We want to provide education for youth, but we know that it goes further than that. So we want to provide education for the educators and education for the parents and community members to make sure that we're all doing the work that we need to do. So I guess that's kind of the short version of it, but I'll also add that the Freedom School started, I was not an original co-founder, but the MAPSO Freedom School actually started in response to a racial inequity issue in the community. There were a number of students, high school students, after 4th of July event that were unfairly targeted by police. They were not allowed to walk into their community to walk home. Police were telling them to go elsewhere.
What day was it?
I'm sorry?
What day was it?
It's 4th of July after the fireworks.
You mean the day when that's the big red, white, and blues, blue day for Americans, where you're supposed to be celebrating democracy? What happened?
So kids were hanging out. They were walking home at night, and the police didn't believe that they lived in the community and were telling them to go elsewhere and kind of shoving them out. And it got physical. And it was
police?
That's correct. Maplewood Police. And so unfortunately, like we see with a lot of Black folks who speak out on their experience with police brutality, they were not believed. But the members, the original co-founders of MAPSO Freedom School, stepped up right away to support these kids. Eventually, through legal means, they were able to get the videos and all kinds of information from the police. And it came out that, surprise, the kids were telling the truth and that we have an issue. We have racism. So that was kind of the start of the MAPSO Freedom School.
Let me just back up and help you with this, because I marched with the MAPSO Freedom School when all of that happened.
What year was that?
16, 17-ish. I can't remember exactly which year, right? See, if you Black and 4th of July and you're walking together and whatnot, you must live in Irvington. You really don't live in Maplewood. That's what the police said. So they literally forced these kids to the Irvington border. And just as they got to the Irvington border, they attacked some. And one particular young man, because he was a bigger young brother, they beat the hell out of him. Mm-hmm. They beat the hell out of him. Right. It was horrible. And they lied and said that it didn't happen like that. But once they got the videotapes, in fact, that is what happened. And by virtue of that protest, they were able to get rid of that police chief who led the line, who led the charge. He put his troops out there to do exactly what they did, right? And that was very clear in the evidence that came out too, right? And Maplewood is since, by virtue of that protest, and Maplewood is a mixed town, and the support was mixed, which was instructional. That's something that you would see play out later in the George Floyd summer, right? It led to getting rid of that police chief, and that town council came up with the resolution calling for whenever the law allows for it, and that's the fight that we got in New Jersey right now, for a strong civilian complaint review board, right, to be able to monitor those kind of things. So,
one of the things I like about
led by an organization of teachers, parents, and students out of a freedom school, that's where that leadership came from, right, had a real impact.
And that's one of the things I like about this conversation that's going to happen tomorrow. There are people who are actually working on solutions to these problems, right? So tell us more about the Freedom School and what does it mean for the teaching of Black history? And because I think it's very powerful when it's like you're organized for activism to push back against police brutality. And we're going to bring Keesha Eure into this conversation in terms of that angle of it, right? But what does it mean to teach history, right? What does it mean to teach Black history in that way? Why is the Freedom School necessary for that?
Well, knowledge is power, right? Like, it's so important for us to know what's happened, where we're coming from. And earlier in the show, you mentioned the Amistad curriculum, and so there are steps being made in the public education world to teach us history, but it's not always being taught, and it's not always being taught truthfully. So it's really important for us as Maps for Freedom School to create that space, like I mentioned before, for students, for youth, to really learn where we've come from. And I think one of the specific things that means so much to me, and that I'm so proud to be a part of, is that part of the history we're teaching is that youth can make a difference. So we're not just talking about just the struggle. We're not just talking about just the problems. As you mentioned, we're talking about the solutions. We're talking about moving forward. And I think it's really important for youth to know that you don't have to be an adult to help lead the charge. You don't have to be an adult to have a voice. We do study and we do learn from adult leaders, but we also study, like SNCC, for example. We study youth, people that were youth that really made a difference in their community. So,
and SNCC is the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, the student
yes.
wing of the Civil Rights Movement, and the shock troops of the Civil Rights Movement, and very advanced organizers that to this day do not get the credit that they are due by virtue of the contributions they made to our struggle. I just wanted to fill in them. That's what I do, baby. I'm a troubleshooter. All right.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, go ahead.
And that's where Freedom Schools originated from, SNCC, the original Freedom Schools in the 60s, right? That came out of SNCC. So I think, just to answer your question in short, I think it's, again, really important to know where we come from. It's really important to know what we have fought against and not to take things for granted, but also to study the people that have done this before us to give us, inspiration and ideas and hope for moving forward.
I think on that level of studying history and studying people who have just done things that worked, I think that Keesha Eure, I really do think that within the next 5 to 10 years, people are going to be studying you, teaching about the stuff that that's been going on in Newark with a lot of the people that you're working with. I think that Zayid, Keesha, I think that just to give an introduction to Keesha Eure, she leads the Newark Office of Violence Prevention. So there are a lot of different programs that fall under that. And it's really like, you've actually taught me so much when it comes to the work that you do, like in terms of violence as a public health issue. And the cool thing is, I hope you don't mind me bragging on this, but I'm probably a little older than I look. Because a while ago, or not so long ago, Keesha Eure was a student in my class. And I always have to say, I'm always honored every time I talk to her, every time that I see her doing stuff, every time I read about her, because I can't ever be more proud, right?
It ain't nothing like a student blowing up.
And the stuff that you're doing is nationally important, right? It's not just important. I mean, just regionally, it's nationally important with these conversations. So the question I'm going to ask you on violence prevention, because we had some conversations on it earlier. I've seen on Meet the Press, I've seen them talk about crime rising in the rest of the country and them talking about solutions as more policing, right? I've seen various panels on various shows, news programs from PBS to MSNBC, where they have entire segments dedicated to rising crime, rising violence. And they use us like Black people are suffering, right? And they talk about police and more policing, right? And when, Ceelea Graham is talking and Zayid are talking about what went on in Maplewood, South Orange, people have this, they're in the popular imagination, it is either policing or Black people getting killed. So Keesha Eure, or Director Eure, right? What is being done so that in the public conversation, we are talking about the work that you're doing? It seems the federal government is recognizing it before the media.
Thank you, everyone, for having me on. Was listening to Selena as she was talking, and we talking about the educational, place. And so as we talk about this national place around violence prevention, like you said, the federal government just opened the Office of Violence Prevention, right? The state office just opened the Office of Violence Prevention. The city of Newark, we're in our 3rd year for our Office of Violence Prevention. And in that, we ultimately have been laying this groundwork for about 15 years or probably more. And I talked about it earlier with the state office, where this work has been, we've been doing violence as a public health issue from being in the streets, right, with our rallies. But before that, there was a SOS.
And
Before that,
we're talking about the rallies for the Newark Anti-Violence Coalition, right?
right, the Newark Anti-Violence Coalition. But before there was a Newark
Yeah.
Anti-Violence Coalition, there were street warriors.
Yeah,
And there
that's
was
right.
a Stop the
That's the
Self-Genocide campaign.
That's
And there
right.
was
That's
SOS, right? And there was Stop Shooting organization. And there was people in the streets that wanted to stop the violence in the community. And we were working in silos, and never did we think that we would be at the point where we are today, where we have like a strategy around public safety. The Newark Anti-Violence Coalition sprouted up with demands, right, in the streets around wanting to have a say in who our public safety director is, wanting to have a say into employment. We knew that Newarkers needed employment and that violence was about poverty. We knew that it was about education, the Amistad we talked about. If Black and brown people love themselves and know about themselves, they're less likely to commit violence against themselves. Around the street organizations, our Bloods and Crips, put your guns down, right? And violence being declared a public health issue. And so that took a lot of work. And so while we are now in this phase of so many organizations being funded for this work, that now we have an investment in the work. And there wasn't an investment before. We were doing this work on blood, sweat, and tears. There was no vision, a bigger vision, until Mayor Baraka ultimately, was elected and wanted to have a public safety strategy. And that public safety strategy became the Newark Community Street Team. But we had all of these other organizations who folded their work into this public safety strategy. And we ultimately knew that for community-based public safety, we needed to be able to have community at the center of the work, that police couldn't be at the center of the work, that people didn't trust the police. We had an issue around trust, that there was brutality still happening. We had over 110 homicides a year, right? And so there was a huge issue. And so we realized that in doing the work that we needed a funding, we needed some money put into this. And so while, would you say, tell no lies, claim no easy victories, that when the mayor tapped the Keesha Eure to come here and to put the public safety strategy in place, while many of us were upset that he went and got somebody from the outside, we ultimately now see that sometimes it takes people from the outside to do sometimes what you can't get done here, because the people here can't hear you. They hear someone else.
Can you break that down for us? Can you explain who was brought in? Can you give us some background? And also why it was so effective, right? Like why, even though there was pushback in the beginning, why it was so effective and why it was so important. Because that seems like a story in and of itself.
Right. So Keesha Eure is from California. He was a part of the gang truce, and he and Mayor Baraka were good friends. And he had been doing some work in California. California was doing groundbreaking work already around violence prevention work. And so he brought him here to stand up the Newark Community Street Team, and ultimately to hand it back over to the people, realizing that many of us just wanted to do the work. We didn't necessarily have that bigger vision for formalizing and professionalizing the work. And so there was a Newark Community Street Team that was formed, and then also a Newark Street Academy that was formed around the educational piece, to be able to create educational programs for our young people who had dropped out of school, who needed a second chance. And so so those were the two mayor's initiatives when he first came and he ran his campaign on public safety and education platform.
You're muted, Jonathan.
So when you're looking at this platform, when you're looking at the way, like it seems like you're describing, there was theory, then there was activism, and then there's like cementing it, right? Making it real and concrete. almost like institutionalizing it, right? Like you have on one end, like we have a freedom school that is a real thing that seems like it's grown into an institution that like is within the community, that it is setting up roots, and
Mhm.
it is going to. It seems like it is setting up roots in ways that the activism set up roots. But and then
Mhm.
it's like it seems like there's an evolution of it in terms of gaining political power and trying to institutionalize it. Um,
Mhm.
you said the federal government set up an Office of Violence Prevention.
Yes, the federal government just set up an Office of Violence Prevention. Our vice president is at the helm of it, and we have one of the guys that I know that's a part of the work is like leading the work. And so we have people who are anchored in the work from the ground, from the grassroots. So we ultimately need someone because there's a $5 billion investment and more money from the federal government into community violence intervention programs, someone to oversee the funding that's going out, but also to be able to make sure that the work is sustainable and that we don't lose sight of learning and understand that we are part of public safety. We are public safety, right? And we talk about those who are closest to the problem as closest to the solution. And so for us in the city of Newark, with all of the fights, all of the bumps, the bruises, all of the work that we've been doing around this, people think that they can helicopter into this work, and you can't just helicopter in, right? We've had meetings and rallies and protests and phone calls and city council meetings, and you name it, we did it. In order to get an investment into this work. And it's not just funding investment. We're talking about real estate investment. We're talking about access. We're talking about a seat at the table. We're talking about power to be able to determine what it is that we want to do. And so while we are looked at as a national model, we also model in what other people are doing in other cities. And so we have been able to cut our numbers down tremendously. We're at 40, I think 40 right now, 40, between 40 and 42 is our number. But we're not measuring, at least my office is not measuring the number of homicides or if crime and violence is down. We're measuring how much investment do we have in people's trauma? Are we putting resources into the community? Are we helping people with food, clothing, shelter, transportation, relocation, education? Are we helping with those things that are the root cause, social, emotional problems and issues that are the root cause of why people are committing violence? Are we employing people? Are we making sure people feel safe in their community? Are we making sure that people have safe places to go? Education, all of those entities. And so the outcome is probably lower crime and violence, but we really have to stay on that forefront of the resources that we're putting into helping people to not have to resort to crime and violence.
I think that when the way you break it down, right, is that you talk about an ecosystem, right? And it seems like you're talking about lots of different organizations that do that. And you were, and part of it is about the institutionalization, that there's a federal Office of Violence Prevention. There's a state one too. What is this like? How does the federal government work with the state government work with you? I'm asking this as a question of institutionalization because I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask Ceelea. After you answer the question, I'm going to ask Ceelea again about what is it? Is there another step to institutionalizing freedom schools, right? Looking at it in these particular ways. I always like having guests to be on at the same time because I think that there's a level of community in the work that we do that is so similar, even if they're different locations, that just bring up different thoughts. So what does it mean? Like, how does the federal government work with the state government, work with ours? And what is that vision? Like what is your vision for how these things work together?
So the real answer is I don't know, right? Because the local one came first, then came the state, then came the federal, right? Normally it works top down, but now we're in a bottom up kind of a situation. And so what's happening is that
Which,
the
from
bottom,
the perspective, is how it's supposed to go.
certainly.
Go ahead.
Certainly.
Hmm?
So it is a bottom up kind of a situation. And it's really us trying to have some sustainability in the work. And so the state office is going to ultimately start to look at best practices for the whole state. Different counties, different cities are doing different things in terms of their hospital violence intervention programs, all of their different programs, their healing programs. So the state is looking at all of the different cities, all of the different counties, what they're doing, and then implementing best practices. And I would imagine that the federal government is going to do the same. They're going to look at other states and what they're doing and start to hold on to what best practices are. For the local city, we get to have autonomy, and we know what our people need. We know what our residents need, right? We know what the community needs. We know our community meetings and the outcomes of them. And so we have more relationship in terms of in terms of it. So ultimately, for me, I just put out $12 million to all of these organizations, about 30 organizations. And we catching some slack because of it, because some people are very critical of who got money. Some people feel like they should have gotten money. But ultimately, I am not apologizing for funding these organizations because we've never had investment. So the police get to have a $225 million budget, $235 million budget. And if we get 11, 15, $20 million, then it's an issue. And it shouldn't be, because community has equity and they have a stake in this work as well. And so they need to get an opportunity and a chance to be able to prove themselves and to put their resources and be able to benefit from the resources. There's a compliance team that's going to oversee it. There's a monitoring that's going to oversee it. We didn't just put money out and give it away, but we're really looking to give organizations an opportunity to do trauma recovery work, safe passage work, victim services, domestic violence, high-risk intervention. And I have like 2 other categories. So it's like 7 categories, youth mentoring services, and that we're funding. And so they all work together, right? Clinical and therapeutic services, they all work together. That's what the ecosystem consists of. All the organizations know their lane and what lane that they're working in. And we're helping people to coordinate and collaborate and be accountable for the work that they're supposed to do in the community. And they should be funded for the work that they're doing.
Hmm. And I love what you're saying for that, because so many times we're just expected to do that level of heavy lifting, like the level of heavy lifting, the level of deep emotional work that you do, that the people in these organizations do, all of them, right? It is deeply taxing, emotionally taxing work. You are seeing often
sometimes dangerous.
Right. And seeing people sometimes at their worst, and sometimes, yes, dangerous, right? Like, because we're not even talking about that. Like, please talk about protection and the protection they need. And we're real sympathetic because it's a dangerous job. But the people who are doing violence prevention on the ground for you are going in, are walking into dangerous situations unarmed, right? The only thing they have is their voice and their credibility and their experience. And they talk to people, right? And that's why you're like, no, there's levels of training to this. There's a science behind it, really, that it seems like is being developed, or at least being better understood, to try to bring it to a larger stage. Is that where we are right now? Trying to look at some of these best practices and bring them like to a larger stage, like that bottom up stuff that you're talking about?
Certainly, but we have to give people an opportunity to fail too, right? So we fail forward. We have to give people an opportunity. We have to take a risk, right? And so we're so unforgiving sometimes in this work because it's never been funded before, it's never been invested in before, and that we have to invest in and have some grace for the people who are risking their lives, losing sleep, up all night in the hospitals, on the streets, at the scenes, helping with the funeral arrangements, hearing those weeping cries, taking kids back to school when they're suspended, intervening in some of the neighborhood beefs that are happening, all of the things. And so these are things that are happening every day, social aspects of these things that are happening every day, and we have to bear that. And so there has been a tremendous amount of trauma, right? Historical trauma that has plagued the city for 50 years, since I was 67 rebellion, right? And probably before then. But there's harm that's happened, and we got to repair some of this harm. And we got to be honest about some of the things that has happened. And we can't be afraid to address it, and we can't be afraid to invest in it, and we can't be afraid to hold each other accountable for it.
I know that we don't have you for much longer, Keesha. I just want to ask you to follow up on one thing that you said. You were like, well, really, the last two questions would be, what do you mean? What are the things that we have to be honest about that we haven't been honest about, right? I think that starting that conversation, I know that there's going to be an entire panel tomorrow, but starting off on that, like, what are the things that we need to be honest about that we haven't been honest about in this work? And the last question is just going to be like, how many different organizations are we talking about? So it was a light one, but this one is like, it was a deep question. Like, we have to be honest in this work. We don't always want to be honest about some things. What are the things that you're thinking about and talking about? Because I think that can be instructive across all of what we do, right? I don't think it's just in violence prevention. I think maybe some of the things you're going to talk about in terms of what we need to be honest about, right? Give grace, forgiveness, right? But be honest about that and have conversations about that we have not been willing to do. What are the things that come to your mind when you're talking about that?
So I'll go with the easy one first in terms of how many organizations we're talking about. We're talking about 30, 40 organizations that's a part of our ecosystem. And that includes the police department, the Board of Education, hospitals, and institutions. So it's not just community-based. There's institutions that's a part of the ecosystem. And the ecosystem is just our collective impact model, right? The ecosystem is our family system, if you will, right? We are creating a system of collaboration, partnership, and working together, and feeling like who's working with who and how we all feed into each other. And so some of what we have to be honest about is some of the structural and institutional racism, right, that has plagued our community, that has ultimately allowed all of these cities, right, a national issue, right, around violence is into an uptick. And that's not by any misunderstanding, like it's by design, right? Because it's big business, right? So we ultimately know violence is bad for business, but on some other aspect, violence, domestic violence, sexual violence, community violence, gun violence, right, is good for some other folks' business. And so who benefits from it, right, is really the question. And if we have Black and brown people at the top of the list for everything bad, then we have to take a look at why that has happened. And we have to look at our historical generational trauma, systemic racism, structural racism, and white supremacy.
So, again, I know that your time is, first of all, I'm always honored every time you come on. You're one of the busiest people like I've ever met, in that you're constantly on call. Like, you know, something happens in Newark, you get a call for it, right? And you're constantly on the run. I don't think people appreciate the extent to which you put yourself out there, right? We've had so much so we've had a lot of conversations about, like, when you come on the show, we talk about self-care and the importance of self-care for people doing the work, right? So thank you so much for.
As you're thanking her, Jonathan, I want to say this also, right? She's one of the few people that represents the two sides of the coin that I'm talking about, right? Keesha was one of my babies in the party, right? And we wanted to do a lot more on police brutality. Right. But the violence was so bad, right? That's what the community had wanted us to address more than anything else, right? So she's been on both sides of this question, right? And it's a developed voice on both sides, right? And that's the bridge that we're trying to build between those two streams of struggle, so there can be coordination in terms of how we organize in our community. We have to fight for coordination, for resources with these new entities that are supposed to be buying into this strategy, like a state office of violence prevention and a federal office of violence prevention. Their vision should align with the community's vision. And that's a wild conversation when you got, politicians who are entrenched with taking care of the police, no matter how bad it is, first
Right.
as a matter of course in politics 101. That's how they all get down. Almost all of them get down like that. To break that paradigm, that requires us to understand it. You know, we not just, you know, no fuzzy wuzzy peacemakers. We had to raise hell for these resources, and we're gonna have to raise hell to establish that sustainability that she was referring to.
Right. So that and that for that to be institutionalized, like Keesha, honor always to have you. Look forward definitely to tomorrow. Thank you, like sincerely, because I know I like you're in your car right now. I know you pressed. I know your phone is blowing up. I want to have you on for longer, but I know, you know, I know what you're doing. We gotta, you know, we gotta put some of this stuff down on paper too, right? Like in terms of some of the stuff that you're doing, because it needs to be replicated. The story needs to be told. The story needs to be told over and over again. Because there's a story in Newark that I think can help everyone else in the United States. I think every Black person in the United States can be absolutely helped by your story and the story of the ecosystem that you are leading right now. So thank you again. It's always an honor.
Thank you all for having me. I'm ready to listen over here about this Freedom School.
All right. So also, and you helped us lead right into it, because the last thing that you said was we have to be honest, right, about the structural history of the things that led us here, right? And when we started talking about the Freedom School, we like then Baba, you were bringing in the activism that had to take place when kids are being targeted and kids are being brutalized. And there's a direct link, right, that I loved about the need to address the brutality, right? And at the same time, that need to deal with that history, right? The history of what's going on. So tell us more, right? I know you've already started telling us a lot about the what the Freedom School does in terms of teaching of this history. But how I know you teach in South Orange, you know, Maplewood, and I know that, you know, you're working toward things like kids, the segregation that exists, that's been well documented, that happens within South Orange, Maplewood, right? Like for years, we've constantly heard about kids in AP classes that are predominantly white, predominantly non-Black, right? And the kids who are not in or in the lower classes, predominantly Black. How difficult it is, how there's tracking. They talked about it, you know, in Montclair, in South Orange. They talked about it in Montclair high schools. They talked about it in South Orange, Maplewood high schools. They talk about the segregation that takes place in suburban areas, right? Like where that are integrated in terms of population, but segregated in terms of very hyper segregated in terms of within the school, right? So you'll have a high achieving class and a lower achieving class that are segregated based on race. How does the Freedom School start to address this?
A lot of things. I mean, it takes a lot. You mentioned before the idea of like institutionalizing these things. This is in our school is an example of institutional racism, right? Like this school is just another system that unfortunately favors or allows more support for white students, right? So in addition to, again, just providing a space, just providing more education, we have to look at the institution. We have to look at who is teaching, who has power in this space, and who has the ability to make decisions that are going to affect our students in this space. So in addition to teacher education, like we do professional development workshops, we've done a few through the district. We've partnered with the district. We've invested time and energy with the district. So even next week, we're going to be leading some equity professional developments, right? Giving educators time and space to really reflect on their experiences, their backgrounds, and how that can affect what they do and say and teach in the classroom, and decentering whiteness in the classroom, for example, making sure that we look at all students for who they are and not just what they look like, right? but also looking at policies. Like, we have to make sure that we are going to board meetings. We're working with the Board of Education, and we currently have a liaison on the Board of Education that we get to work with. But we have to look at policies, and they can't just be Band-Aid policies. So you mentioned the AP courses. One of the things that the district did to try and alleviate this de facto segregation is opening up classes, AP classes and honors classes, to everybody who wants to be there. If you decide you want to take an honors class, if you decide you want to take an AP class, you can do so. You no longer have to rely on teacher recommendation, and that's supposed to take some of the bias out of it. But when you just open up the space and access, that's not enough, because just walking through the door doesn't mean that you're truly in the space. So how do we go beyond that? How do we make sure that kids who enter AP classes, particularly Black students and non-white students, how do they actually feel welcomed in that space? How do we know that the teachers who are teaching those classes are actually going to treat them like a student that belongs there, and not be the token Black person that we're all going to look to when we start talking about race or something like that? How do we make sure that the students who can afford tutors and can go to academies after school and on the weekends are still getting the same experience as the students who cannot necessarily afford that? How can we make sure that they're all going to be as successful? So we do have to look at the board policies. We do have to make sure that institutionally we're educating all of our students, we're teaching them the truth, and that we are providing true access and true equity for all of these students.
So it seems like some of the things that you're also doing is directly providing that tutoring yourselves within the organization, and providing both emotional support and actual tutoring support within these subjects areas, right? Like, is that part of what Freedom School does? The Freedom School does as well?
So I will say that we don't do so much subject-based tutoring, but we do work really closely with another organization that does exist in the high school. They're called the MAC Scholars, the Minority Achievement Community. And MAC Scholars does do a lot of actual tutoring, and they also have their own kind of after-school and Saturday programs and all kinds of amazing stuff. There's an amazing woman, Marcia Hicks, who runs it. So we have the opportunity to work closely with MAC Scholars. A lot of our Freedom School students are MAC Scholars. And so one of the things that we do is just making sure that, again, students have support, right? So maybe we don't provide the specific subject area tutoring, but we know where to point you to.
And one of the things I was getting at is, like, even if it's not the specific subject area, when you're teaching kids about their history, when you're teaching kids about our history or American history or world history, right? When you're teaching them about Black people, I think that does have an empowering effect that helps them within their other classes. As in, there are so many different microaggressions, right? Like it seems like Black kids in white spaces have to deal, like, especially in high school, are dealing with all sorts of aggressions that come from people who have no access to that history, right? Or chose not to have access to what you're teaching. It seems like that automatically creates some level of skill to be able to deal better within those spaces, which is inevitable, right? Like, I think those skills have to come simply because you're teaching them on a level of survival and thriving within those spaces. I know we're coming close to the end of this segment. Can please talk to us about anything that you really want to showcase, especially for tomorrow? You're one of our panelists tomorrow. I'm going to look forward to that within education. What is some of the things that are something that you that we have not talked about yet that you really want to talk about or showcase or highlight for tomorrow?
I think based on some of what I've heard talked about here, some of the things that you and I spoke about, Jonathan, is like the path forward. So it's really easy to talk a lot about what the issues are, and that's important. You do have to talk about what the issues are, but what can we actually learn? What can we actually do to move forward? So I mentioned before that one of the things I'm really proud of is that we do empower students, and you kind of just touched on this too. We do empower students to understand that they have a voice and that they can do a lot to make changes in their community. But a lot of that empowerment and a lot of that education comes from community, and that's something that can continue to go forward. So, you know, we have specific texts and activities and things that we do with the students. We like this past year, kind of one of our main books was talking about Black and African American soldiers and how their experience, American soldiers, were different than their white counterparts. Last year, we did The Rebellious Life of Rosa Parks, and learning more than just like, you know, her experience on the bus. Like she was the real deal. You know, she didn't just sit back and be polite, and she was the real deal. So we have those kinds of texts, but we also bring in other people. We've had former political prisoners. We've had former members of the Black Panther Party come in and really talk to students. And I think we have to not be afraid to partner, and not be afraid to be in community, and not be afraid to say, I don't know everything, but let me go to the other people who have done this work, and other people who can work with us, and who are more than happy to be here and talk with you about what they've done, and actually come up with solutions that we can try. And, you know, we talked briefly before about failing forward. Not everything is going to work, and that's okay, but we have to actually try solutions. We have to brainstorm. We have to be in community together and actually try to do what we can to fix what is wrong. So I'm really proud of us using our community, investing time in all sorts of people, hooking in people from the community to make that path forward.
I want to lift up, and I appreciate you lifting up, well, you know, those teachings and whatnot. And I was going to ask you about, and I wanted you to explain also the partnership with the Howard Zinn Project, but I wanted to lift up one of my dear comrades, Jamal Joseph, who we call Panther Baby. He was one of the youngest to go into the Black Panther Party in the New York chapter, and was one of those teachers, one of those Panthers who talked to this network that's come out of the Maps of Freedom School and whatnot. Right now, as we're talking, we have the Black Panther Film Festival, and they're showing Dear Mama, and then, you know, Jamal had a hand in the production of that. So he's actually, you know, and I've been trying to get him on for a minute, and between that and you know, some modest health challenges and whatnot, he continues to be a resource. And if anybody wants to read his story, get the book Panther Baby. Right, it's another narrative on the Black Panther Party of a young man. People don't realize how young the Panthers were. Right, he was 14 years old when he went into the Black Panther Party. Right, and that's you know, that's something else that young folks need to see, that the whole question of taking responsibility for the change you want to see, you don't have to wait until you got 9 degrees and all these letters behind your name to do that. You can be an agent for change right where you are at whatever time that light comes on in your head to be a part of the change that you need to see. And they've been very good in facilitating that consciousness.
Excellent, right? Like, well, I absolutely look forward to tomorrow's panel on education, right? Like, I think that we have a lot of really good people. Very, very, very much look forward to the intermix of that panel. And so, thank you so much for coming on. We definitely have to have you back on to fully talk about stuff that you're doing, different stuff that comes on. That's going on there as well. So thank you so much.
Wait. 2 things. Principal Kafele gave you a shout out. I don't know if you saw it, but Rudy Kafele wanted to shout you out on this platform. He's a dear friend of ours, and we have him on as often as we can. And you forgot to answer the ritual question, Jonathan.
Oh, that's true. That's true. So fair enough. So we're always talking about culture, about hip hop as part of who we are, how we grew up, and it intersperses in everything, really everything that we do to some extent or another, based on our perspective. So, who's your favorite hip hop artist, individual or group, or who are you just rocking with now? Who inspiring you now?
You know what? I have to say, I have been really, really looking forward to listening to a lot of J. Cole. Like, he's a very popular artist, but I have to say I never like really listened to him a whole lot beyond, you know, like what was on the radio or something. But he speaks about a lot of important things. And so it was just earlier this week, I think I heard something, and I can't even tell you, I can't even remember the song it was, but I was like, wait a second. He's saying some real stuff. So I am really looking forward to getting into some more J. Cole stuff, just beyond like, you know, the top hits that are in the radio. I want to hear more about what he's saying, what he's thinking, his social consciousness, because a lot of that seems to come through his work. So that's my answer for right now, J. Cole.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know what your schedule is like, but feel free to sit in on this next segment as well, and also ask questions. You're an educator. A lot of times that like intellectually curious, and we're always trying to get different generations involved. So feel free to sit in on the next segment as well. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It was an honor.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Honor to you as well, right? And see you tomorrow, right? So so right now, the good things that I'm really honored again, right? Having great people on. And I'm really honored to have Mysonne on. I've only met you one time, and a recording artist, hip hop artist. Most people know from the Bronx, has been recording for.
Incredible messenger.
Right. Like conscious poet, right? Like I love hip hop where like it's about poetry, it's about lyrics, it's about hip hop, right? Like it's about everything that is. So thank you for coming on All Politics Are Local. We are honored to have you on. And thank you for also, you know, you're going to be there tomorrow talking about hip hop, the 50th anniversary, and art and culture, right? I'm going to start off just jumping right into it, right?
Jump right into it.
Yeah. What does Amiri Baraka's birthday, right? Where this is all set around that. What does Amiri Baraka mean to you in the context of art, in the context of hip hop, in the context of, you know, what you do?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you guys for having me, and it's an honor to be able to grace your platform and even speak on someone who is as influential and iconic as Amiri Baraka and what he meant to arts and culture and politics and how he merged the two worlds and how he showed the voice. One of my mentors, Hayat Belafonte, always said, when the artists are the gatekeepers of truth. And, Amiri Baraka is one of those people who definitely showed that. And to be on his birthday, on the eve of this great panel, it's just amazing because I understand that I have a duty. I think that's what it is. As we just grow and we learn, as we evolve as men, we realize that it's not just about us anymore, right? And some of us weren't able to be Panther babies at 14. Some of us didn't get the knowledge, didn't have someone, to pour into them, weren't around to see that. And and I always wish I had that level of enlightenment, had people around me who were, that knowledgeable in our blackness and what black culture was and how we were supposed to stand up in that. But when I did receive it infringed upon me that I had a duty, and so when I think about Amiri Baraka, I see someone who understood he had a duty, and he fulfilled his duty and created a legacy in which his sons live in which we continue on in. So it's amazing, and I'm blessed to be here.
So what is when you're looking at like state of hip hop right now, right? Like what are some of your thoughts about like hip hop's 50 years old? What are some of your thoughts about the future, specifically about the link between hip hop culture, consciousness, blackness, right? I know that like growing up, I was very highly influenced by Public Enemy, highly influenced by a lot of the other artists, KRS, highly influenced even now, right, by Kendrick or Jay or No Name. I'm loving No Name right now. I love a new album, but like it seems like there's certain things that just speak to me, right, in ways that other things, do not. And I think there needs to be a plethora of stuff. But how do you see like where hip hop is now, specifically in terms of the way that you're talking about it of an obligation? Like just what is your view of the landscape?
I think for me, it's because when you're actually conscious and you're aware and you seek something, you find it, right? I think, mainstream hip hop, I think, doesn't promote it. But I think there are so many different artists from all over the world, and I think it's kind of like the gift and the curse of the internet is that if you go on the internet and you actually search, you can find hundreds of artists, right? But there's also hundreds of artists that probably nobody should be hearing, right? So the mainstream doesn't at this point. They don't see a need or a requirement to advocate for those such artists, right? They don't really see a need to advocate for those such artists. But when I listen to certain artists like the people you name, like Cole and Kendrick, like my brother Simba, is brothers who I know that are conscious, who are just dope artists, and because they're not mainstream, people don't know about them. But when your ear is in tune, and you know what frequency to listen on, you'll find them. So I think hip hop in its entirety is in a great space. I don't think mainstream hip hop is in the best space, because even when you talk about those artists you speak of, Kendrick and Cole, who are mega artists, they don't get the same mainstream push that artists who don't even have the same following or anything that they have. They don't really get that kind of push. So understanding that and realizing that situation, I just know what it's going to take for us to get what we need to get. It's going to take us to be intentional. It's going to take artists like myself and others who are conscious enough to be able to promote those certain artists, right, who are doing the things that need to be done. It's going to take us to utilize our platforms and our voices to say, hey, this is an artist you need to listen to. This is an artist that's dope.
It's funny that you're saying that in terms of especially like Saba, No Name. I found those out from my students. I'm a teacher, right? Love hip hop. One of the ways that I bond with some of my students is they love poetry too, right? A lot of them are poets. They love poetry. They're actually and with exactly what you said, they're introducing me to people I never would have heard of, right? Like I went to a No Name concert a couple of years ago because my students were, and she's a poet, right? Like she's just a phenomenal poet, right? Like you can just read her stuff and you're like, wow, the way she puts it together, just great. This last album she had that just came out a few weeks ago, I think is better than anything she's done, right? I know the New York Times had this thing about women in hip hop, and they didn't include Rhapsody, and they didn't include No Name.
I swear to God, I was just about to tell you about rap. Like, I was with Rhapsody this week, and Rhapsody let me hear her album is coming soon. And she let me hear.
Rhapsody got a new album coming soon? Okay.
Yeah, it's coming soon in like February, and she let me hear about 2 songs that are so phenomenal. That those are the only 2 songs she let me hear, but they were so phenomenal that it was like, wow. She's like, the fact that she's like somebody that they consider underground or someone who is not pushed by the mainstream is like, it's criminal. It's criminal that Rhapsody is like it's criminal. So, Rhapsody is my sister. I love her to death. She was with me in Kentucky, and we were doing a campaign to make sure that Daniel Cameron, who is the Attorney General in Kentucky, doesn't become the governor. So we've been working to combat that, and she's been on the ground with us for Breonna Taylor the whole time. Like, so she's just such a dope individual, and the fact that she raps better than 90% of the dudes I know is just phenomenal.
Okay, so like,
let him build on what
I thought I was the only one, right? Because when she came out with Eve was one of the best albums of the last 5 or 6 years, hands down. I put Eve against everybody else coming out, and you got to just hear it. Like, she a poet too. Like, she's a poet too, right? And that was straight, like, real poetry production, right? Like, it was the concept of it. Brothers loved the album Eve, right? The fact that she had so many different people on, like I haven't heard Queen Latifah that good in years. That like whatever she did with Eve,
but
just
that's the birth child. Like Rhapsody is the birth child of Queen Latifah. Like they birthed her, and it's like that's what's supposed to happen, right? You're supposed to. My son is supposed to be the next version of me, the better version of me. So when you listen to Rhapsody, you realize that with Queen Latifah and with MC Light and what Muhammad, like what rappers that actually rapped did, they influenced her in such a way that it made her push the envelope to the next level.
I'm glad she's coming out with something new, right?
Yeah.
Like she was actually on our show years ago, right? Like not from Eve, but the album that was before that. And just a phenomenal poet, phenomenal individual. You're saying that you were on the like there was a link, and actually this is actually really important, right? There's a link between the culture and the advocacy. Can you talk about that in terms of your experience and what you were talking about with Rhapsody?
So, like I said, my mentor, Harry Belafonte, said that the artists are the gatekeepers of truth. And he also said when the music is strong, the movement is strong. Or no, he said when the movement is strong, the music is strong. So understanding that when we're in our essence of this movement and we're doing the work that's necessary, it influences the music, right? Like we look during the George Floyd times, it pushed artists who were never conscious before to have to embrace some level of consciousness, right? It pushed you outside of your comfort zone. It made Lil Baby and them have to talk about issues that were really going on in the communities. It made all artists who normally didn't do it. They were good artists, but they normally didn't, and it pushed them to say, "Yo, dang, I'm so touched by this that I have to put this in the music because this is the reality we're dealing with." And I think, that the requirement for some of us is different. There are some of us who are going to be engaged in this movement because it's our life's calling, and it's what we've been called to do. Then there's some of us who are going to be pushed by moments in this movement and in these times, or certain things are going to push us, and it might push you to the point where you can't come back no more. Some of us is going to push us a little bit, some is going to push all the way, but some is going to push, some of us are always going to be in it. So I think that it's different intersections into this work, and and into what it takes, and the different artists who have different responsibilities or feel different levels of responsibilities. But I think the music in itself is always a reflection of what the community and what the people and what the society is going on. You just have to listen, and you got to tune into certain artists who are always in tune with some of the deeper things, or it's like you go to a store, and certain stores have the sneakers before anybody else got them.
Right.
They're a little ahead, but eventually, those sneakers, everybody's gonna try to get them because those are the hot things. So I think that's what it is. I think that's what happens with music, and especially in the movement and the times. There are certain issues and certain realities that some of us are so in tune with before it's prevalent and before George Floyd happens or before Breonna Taylor happens. Some of us are talking about, how police brutality and things like that are destroying and are impacting our communities. And then there's some of us who have to actually see those things, and then they're like, wow, I didn't even realize that was going on. So I think that's where we are.
Yeah, and I like when you talked about that, there's a lot of people who are out there. There are a lot of artists that are out there that people just don't see. And a lot of the music that I listen to actually comes from my students because they connect to it, right? I think one of the best things about streaming services is that, when you let it go, the artists just start popping up on your list and you're like, it's here, right? So when a lot of people are like, "Hey, hip hop is not what it was," no, I mean because the medium's also changed, right? And I think to some extent that's freeing, because there are a lot of people who are producing music who never would have been able to produce music before as well, right? Like, and you have to find who they are, but these artists are absolutely out there, right? So I appreciate that a lot. On a similar note, right? Like they were like, there's not much hip hop that's being sold in mass right now. Like there are a lot of articles coming out about like Billboard's top. There's no big Billboard top 100 that deal with hip hop. That they were only, I think, maybe one this year so far, and that was very recently. So, what is there? What is your what are your thoughts on that? Right, like is hip hop becoming? And I got to ask this question, right? I've been seeing a lot of hip hop at the Blue Note, right? I've been seeing, I've been seeing Talib Kweli at the Blue Note. I've been seeing DMC at the Blue Note, right? Working with Bob James. Like, is hip hop going the way of jazz? And when I went there, there was a lot of white people, a lot more white people there than black people, almost like jazz. So the question I'm asking is hip hop going the way of jazz, or what? Like, talk to me.
I think hip hop is more of a global. It has more of a global impact, and I think hip hop looks so. Excuse me. I think hip hop looks so many different ways to so many different people, right? Jazz only had one sound and one feel, so you can identify what jazz was. So when the culture, moved away from it, it had its core base, and those people went to the Blue Note, right? I think you can't really do that with hip hop because hip hop has so many different tentacles. I think the phase that hip hop is in right now is not something that is universally connecting, right? I don't think it's universally. I think there are pockets of it that connect at times, but I think as projects, I don't think nobody is so engaged with any one hip hop artist in the new genre of what hip hop has evolved into, that it is really taking off, and that's why you see people like Nas able to still come out and have #1 albums. People like Jadakiss resurging off of or verses, and you hear a lot of older hip hop artists dropping albums where lyricism and substance really come out, right? Because they know that people want substance. That's a proven formula, and I think hip hop in itself has moved away from substance for streams, for individual streams, and how many people listen to a song, one song or whatever, and they moved away from creating artists and having artistry and having bodies of work that you can sit there and listen to, like, wow, this is a body of work. And I think at this point now, people are realizing the fact that Nas can drop an album damn near every year and get a Grammy and continue to get Grammys, when in the essence of hip hop, when he was pretty much deemed one of the top, he wasn't able to do that. It means that people right now really want substance. So if you grab young kids, younger individuals who have that substance, they're able to connect more to to the status quo, to the youth right now. So I think the people who are going to win are going to say, listen, you see what Nas is doing? You see what J. Cole and them is doing?
Right.
Like J. Cole is moving. He's in his 30s now. He's still making more noise on features than these artists are daily. Right? You understand what I'm saying? So
and Nas is releasing whole albums that are just like, yo, Nas, right? Like he's releasing great albums now.
Yeah, at 50.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? So 50, I don't think hip hop is 50 and Nas is 50. So I don't think hip hop is going where jazz is. I think hip hop is an eternal music. I think, you know, it's gonna morph into this, it's gonna morph into that, and then it's gonna come back. But it's always gonna come back to substance. I don't care what you say, substance never disappears. I just heard, I forgot the guy's name, and I want to think of his name, but I was in
Where's he
Kentucky,
from?
and it's not a hip hop artist, but he sounds like an old down south singer, right? And I don't know what his name is exactly. I heard them talking about him, and he was just talking about, it's called, I think the name of the song is "One Monkey Don't Stop No Show."
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know who he is, but he sounds. I thought the song was from the '60s when I was listening to it. But this was a young kid, and they was talking about how his following is so big, and how everybody wants him, and I'm like, wow, he took the formula from the down south chitlin circuit, and he took the whole formula from that, and he just reinvented it as a youngster, as somebody that's probably in his 30s, right? So that's what it's gonna take. It's gonna take like Diddy did. Like Diddy, when Diddy was taking hits that was from the '80s and he was remixing them, and everybody was jumping on them. There are certain things that have been proven to win, right? Substance and good music and good feel good music have been proven to win. I think people have moved more. Hip hop in right now in modern day has moved more to shock value, right? People don't. The artists you hear, they say things that are shock value, like, wow, I can't believe you did this. Videos, I can't believe you did this. It's so much things that's like, wow. So they want the videos to have streams. They want people they're looking for views and streams, right? Instead of building hardcore fan bases. I think when people get back to, I'm gonna slowly but surely build my fan base up one by one. I'm gonna talk about things that I know I believe in, that I could touch with somebody, that I'm gonna connect with, that somebody's gonna listen to, and somebody might shed a tear, you know. And when they get back to that, when A&Rs and record companies start saying, look, we tired of just getting these fast streams. We want to build artists that for the next 10 years, in 10 years, when everybody else is faded out, they can come out and do tours and sell out arenas, you know, because they had a music that touched people in a way that nothing else did.
And that level of when we start to get past the social media likes, more toward the poetry, because one of the things I like what you said in that, and what I think is unique about hip hop, that, you know, is that we actually do love poetry. I think hip hop connected us to something in a way that goes back to all the way to beginning, right? Like goes to the beginning of, you know, us in Africa, right? Like goes back to the beginning, and that
goes back to what we call signifying.
Right, like we love poetry, man. Like poetry matters. Poetry is like life, and to us, it's life. Poetry, it just is, right? And the way in which people use words that hit us in a way that move us, like it's the poetry that moves nations, right? It's the poetry that has that potential. Poetry's got more potential than bombs.
It does, and it's skill. Because it's a skill level, right? It's like when I listen to music now, right? People want to simplify, right? Because they think that when you simplify things, you build a connection, right, with people because it's something that they can do, right? I think when you show a skill set that other people can't do, it builds more artistry. It makes me have to appreciate you way more at the same time. When you're able to tell a story that I can connect with in a way that I can't tell it, right? It makes me have to give a respect to your artistry, right? Like when I used to listen to Nas tell stories or Biggie tell stories, I used to be like, wow, he told a story that I've probably been through, or most of us have been through, but I could have never said it like that, right? And I think now, today's generation, they sacrifice that because they don't have the skill set, right? They so they don't believe, they don't want to find the artists, you know, the laziness to find artists who are able to paint pictures like Van Gogh and this and that. So now this is what I'm gonna compare it to. I'm gonna compare it to when you have an artist who takes the time to paint and create a lifelike painting of a building or a forest, and you can see the intricate details in the leaves, and you can see how he took his time and painted each and every one of those things to where it looks so real that you're like, wow. And then you have something that's abstract art that look like somebody just threw some shit at the wall, and you like, and they tell you just close your eyes and envision what this is, right? When you start comparing those things and people start telling you to give less value to the artist who took his time to give you that intricate thing, right? And then you give it more value to the abstract art, it makes everybody feel like they could do it, so they don't have to value it that much. It's of less value. You hear it when you hear it, oh yeah. But if I can do what you do, then why do I really need to value you?
Okay.
Right? When we watch Michael Jordan and we watch LeBron and you watch these skilled players, they do things that the average person can't do. It makes you like, wow. It makes you aspire, or you either say to yourself, I'm not going to get in that. If I can't do better than that, then I don't even want to be involved in that. But what we started doing is people saying, I can't do that, so I'm going to make that not cool, and I'm going to make the simple shit that I can do over here the status quo. So all of us, a million of us over here rapping, that we don't got no cadence, we don't got no flow, we don't got no lyricism, no level of poetry or nothing. We just going to say the simplest shit possible that anybody can connect with, right? And we're going to make it seem like nobody wants to hear the boring, the big words and the philosophy and the music. That's boring to us now. That's what they did. They telling you that skill is boring.
Wow.
And the simple shit that they doing that takes absolutely no skill level is what people want to hear. And that's the narrative that they created.
Wow. And it's funny because it seems like both in politics and in hip hop, they did the same thing, right? They dumb
Exactly.
it down, right? They make it so you don't even know what's true or real anymore, right? Putting out all kinds of crap, right? Like to everybody. So that's interesting that you're putting it on that angle in terms of that's how culture is working. Just put out like some
Just
stuff
throw
that
it at the wall and see if it can. That's what they do. When you sit there and look at Trump, Trump has the level of presidential ability, this presidential aura, stance, to where I feel like this is a person I want to follow, as much as my 12-year-old son has. Right? But they say Trump just tells the truth. So if he gets up there and says, well, I don't really know much, but I just know that everything going right and we need to fix it. And everybody go, yeah. I don't really know how to do it, but I just know this. If I get me some money and I figure this out, maybe I can get you some money too. And everybody go, yeah. It's just like, you be sitting there, it's like we in the Matrix. It's like the man ain't said nothing. He's not even competent enough to debate or have dialogue in a room with somebody who actually took the time to think and study and go through a process to become what the president looks like, right? And I think people I think the culture now wants to identify with more of their weaknesses than their strengths. They don't want to be reminded of what they don't possess. It's like, I remember when we were young and everybody used to like girls that had nice hair and their own hair, right? And then there were certain girls that didn't have it. So what they started doing is say, you know what, I'm gonna go get weaves and I'm gonna make the girls who got real hair seem like they outdated. Right? And we're gonna make the weaves the thing. If you ain't got a weave, I don't care how real or good your hair look, if it ain't a weave, then you out the loop. And that's what they did. You know, and I watched women who had beautiful hair start getting weaves because the culture said that you needed to get a weave to be accepted.
You know, and a lot of times, a lot of women will just tell you that was like, look, that's what the dudes wanted, right?
Yeah.
Like they will literally say like, hey, I just kept getting checked, right? Some will say because of professional, like as in all the discrimination they would get in the workplace, and then they talk about the disrespect that they got in terms of dating, right? In terms of just like how they got ignored. And so like it's interesting because a lot of this conversation is about aesthetics, right? It's about
That's what it is.
What is good, what is bad, what is beautiful, what is not, right? And what is art, what is not art, right? Like, and who decides, and do we have control over the aesthetics of our community? And I think this goes back to the Amiri Baraka conversation, right? Like the whole concept, like I can't believe that AP, well, I can't believe it, but it's just messed up that AP took Amiri Baraka out of the curriculum, right? When Amiri Baraka really deals with that aesthetic piece that is so important to culture, politics, self-love, understanding even how to navigate and even recognizing, right, the trauma that's been inflicted. Because we don't even know, like if we don't even understand your aesthetics, right? If we don't understand that even your concept of beauty has been dominated, your concept of art has been dominated, right? You're going to be going behind all the time because you are embracing people who hate you, or not even just people, an aesthetic that hates you.
Aesthetic that hates you, and you're embracing their narrative of what good is.
Right.
and they base their whole narrative of what good is as the opposite of what you are.
Can you repeat that? And for what did you just say? You said,
I said, you are basing. There is an aesthetic. You have validated an aesthetic of what good and what success and what positivity is from a people who historically have hated you, right? And then
Amiri Baraka calls that the ghost of double consciousness.
Yep, you embrace that, and then you apply the narrative or the aesthetic to yourself. It's impossible for you to win in it.
Right. Like in terms of you're starting from behind, man. We're starting
Seeing
from
yourself through the eyes of those who hate you.
Yeah,
that's how the old man broke it down.
Yeah.
Now you I want to go back to what you talked about with Breonna Taylor I was
waiting for you to get to that.
Right, and being back in going to Kentucky, and what you're currently doing now. Tell us more about what's going on right now, right? Like what's going on right now, and how does that affect your music? How does it affect your art? What is coming out? Like, is there a connection between the stuff that you're doing and the stuff that you are producing?
Well, it definitely affects my music because my music is based on reality. It's based on it's an outlet. It's a way that I express myself. It's a way that I express what I'm going through. You know, sometimes I express anger, how I express joy, how I just, how I connect what I feel to people, because I know in this moment, a lot of people feel the same way. And that's what it always was for me. Like, I used to love Pac because there were so many things that I was dealing with that Tupac had the similar experiences. And he would poetically express them a way that I couldn't. And I used to be like, wow, how does he even know what's going on? Right? How does he even know what I'm dealing with? You know, and it made me feel seen. So my music always has that element. As far as what we're doing in Kentucky at this moment, like I said, the Attorney General for Kentucky, who is Daniel Campbell, who happens to be a black man, you know, is actually running for governor. And this attorney general, he I would say he obstructed justice. He intentionally denied Breonna Taylor's family closure and justice in what happened to her. You know, he was informed, had all of the knowledge, had all the evidence, he had all of the truth, and he decided to not present it to the grand jury. And this is not coming from me.
Right.
This is coming from the grand jury. You
Right.
know, this is not something I made up. And he not only did he decide not to present the evidence to the grand jury because, you know, the grand jury said that they actually were waiting to hear evidence or charges that they could have charged these officers for the shooting of Breonna Taylor. Because after hearing what had happened, they felt that they were negligent, that they were obligated, that they were at fault for her death. And they would listen. And he never charged that jury with any charges that would have charged those officers for shooting Breonna Taylor. The only charges he gave them were charges that would say that they were negligent for shooting through the walls into 1 or 2 shots into the walls of an upstairs apartment that no one was in. So her life wasn't valued, but the fact that 1 or 2 shots went upstairs into someone else's apartment, they were accountable for that. And when he did that, you know, prior to him coming back and saying that there weren't being any charges found, excuse me, Breonna Taylor's mom, who was dealing with so much at that time, you know, her lawyer, Lanita Baker, had reached out, you know, to Daniel Cameron, who was reached out and said he was going to do all he could to get justice and do the right thing by her family, and had a meeting with her. And excuse me, my allergies. But he reached out to her, and she told him, listen, if by any chance that you're not going to do anything and there are not going to be any charges filed, please do not have me come back to this office, which is an hour away from where I live. You know, you can give me this information on the phone. You can just let me know, so I don't have to waste my time to come here. Despite that request, he still made that lady drive an hour and a half away from her home to sit in her face and tell her that they weren't going to find any charges in the death of Breonna Taylor.
Wow.
Which traumatized her, which had her hysterically crying, which had her sick. She was vomiting coming from the place. A whole hour and a half to where they had to pull over on the side of the road. It was one of the most heart-wrenching days of my life because she's like a sister to me now. You know, she's family, and the pain that she went through that day, and that man, and then he got on the news and was proud to announce that.
Right.
And my
It was sadistic.
and sorry to interrupt, and I'm Donna. I came in late, but
Hey, Donna.
and what you just said, does that rise to the level of malpractice?
I don't know if it's malpractice. I think it's obstruction of justice. I don't know if it's malpractice. It might be.
It should be prosecutorial misconduct.
Yeah.
There's so many levels to how the
allegedly
system covers up and protects police, right?
Yeah.
You can't make it, and the prosecutorial arm almost always gets a pass. The prosecutorial arm and the judges, always get a pass, right? But rarely do you see a prosecutor prosecute police the way they prosecute people.
And
the story that I was going to say, the story that I just posted just confirms that. From ABC News was like Breonna Taylor grand jury members say they were not presented with homicide charges, and it was so wild that the judge in the case ruled in favor of an anonymous juror actually speaking publicly about that, right? Like they weren't even presented with homicide charges.
Yep,
Right.
they weren't presented. They weren't presented with any. They weren't presented with any charges that charged the cops for anything related to Breonna Taylor. Not just homicide charges. They weren't manslaughter, anything, any
Right.
charges that would give them any liability for
And
what
her death.
happened to Breonna Taylor. Yeah, for her death. And so at that point, and then he started to run his campaign, based on the fact that he didn't give her justice. His whole campaign is that he stood with the police and he wasn't intimidated. And he showed us as protesters protesting in front of his house and said that he wouldn't allow us to intimidate him. And he stood with the police and he had the police back and they got his back. That's his campaign.
Right.
So it's a slap in the face. It's the most disrespectful shit that I've ever seen in my life. And it's embarrassing that this is actually a black man.
Yeah.
But we know that we're going to do everything in Kentucky. We've been registering voters. We've been educating voters on what's at stake, and our whole campaign is vote for Breonna. And just letting people understand that the realities of what's going on. And we're gonna be out there every day, every week, at least 2 to 3 days out the week, registering voters. The 10th this week on the 10th is the last day that if you're not registered, that you can register. So we're doing a big push on Monday and Tuesday to get all unregistered voters registered, and then from there we're gonna make sure that we have forms to inform the registered voters. We're gonna have buses that bring registered voters to the polls on the days. We're gonna let them know.
Get out the vote.
Absolutely.
That's right. We're gonna make sure that they know when you can do early voting. All of the information, and they're presented so they can make the best, decision possible.
Mysonne, I want you to let folks know who that we is. A lot of folks don't realize that you actually work with Until Freedom and some other folks. Why don't you just sum that up for those that don't.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, we is Until Freedom. I'm one of the co-founders of Until Freedom, along with Tamika Mallory, along with Angelo Pinto and Linda Sarso. We the 4 co-founders, and we are definitely along with the grassroots organizations in Louisville who've been doing this work before we got there, and we just utilize our voice and platforms to amplify them. So we're going to be out there making sure that we do all the work.
Well, thank you, man. As I said before,
Johnson,
it's an absolute honor. Donna?
Mysonne, I am a big I love the arts because arts tell the story in a different way where people may not understand it by reading or listening to the news. Has there been an opportunity to put this in an art format, meaning, like a movie? One of African Violet is one of a good movie that tells about how the sheriff in Texas was doing a whole lot of a true story, just locking people up and making them take plea bargains at unprecedented numbers. So has that opportunity been presented to you guys?
Well, not so much for us. We haven't really been presented with the opportunity. I don't know about what Brianna's family and they've been presented with, but I just been utilizing the time to put the messages and put the pieces of the pictures that I've been engaged with into my music.
In your music.
So that's as far as it's going in that aspect, as far as I know.
Okay.
I know that we're getting ready to transition in the next segment, and just wanted to ask that question of, like, who are you listening to? Who do you want to? What artist? Like, I always think this is a fascinating question to ask an amazing artist like yourself. Who are you listening to right now? Like, who are you listening to right now? Who inspires you? What, like, or even like, who is your favorite hip hop artist, individual group? Any of those, right? To answer.
I mean, I have a so wide range of artists that I love to listen to. But right now, I listen to a lot of J. Cole. I love J. Cole's music. You know, I love his angle on music. Like I said, I've been listening to a lot of Simba, who is a young artist that I love. I listen to La Russell, who's also a young up-and-coming artist that I love to listen to. I don't think he's dope and has a level of consciousness that's mixed with the music. Nas is probably my favorite artist of all time. So just listening to him, you know, reinvent himself and put out this level of music at this stage of the game is, you know, it's an honor for me. So that's probably pretty much for me.
All right, well, thank you, man, so much. I know that we're getting ready to go into the next segment, but thank you, man, and we got to get you back on. We've been wanting to get you on for a while, but I'm so glad that you're here. We want to definitely get you back on as well. The work that you're doing, both artistically and in the movement, right? Like I actually didn't realize that you were one of the founders of Untold Freedom, right? I know you work with them. I didn't know you were one of the founders. So, I appreciate that as well. Like that's some real Chuck D stuff.
Our listeners will remember that Tamika Mallory was a fixture here for some time with the vote. That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We love Tamika Mallory, right? So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me, guys, man. I can't wait to come back again. I'll definitely be tomorrow at the panel, so I look forward to it.
Yeah, I look forward to this panel. I almost forgot that I got so into the conversation, I just forgot about tomorrow we've been talking about tomorrow all night. So thank you, thank you for bringing that back in at the end. Thank you for bringing that back in at the end. We definitely appreciate it. Congressman, do you want to shout out? Do you want to say something?
I'm about to go be a soccer dad right now. My kids they got soccer practice, so I've been sitting in the parking lot watching them from afar. So now I'm gonna go cheer and critique. So
okay. All good.
That's what's up.
All right.
All right. Take care, man.
We'll see you tomorrow.
All right. You be safe.
All right. Thank you. Congressman, are you there?
He's here. Where's I see him?
Yep. Because we
I'm here.
We always so here's
look like he was putting a pipe in the tunnel.
I just want to say no, but like here's what I want to say that I always have fun doing, right? Like whenever something goes down in Washington,
messing with me.
I'm honored to be able to like actually witness history, right? Because I started to say, early today was like, oh, it must be real boring down there. I mean, it seems like nothing's going on down, in DC right now. Like, it seems like, it's just, business as usual, nothing historical. But man, I mean, 1/6 happens and we talking to you, right when you on, right? This happens.
Like we had a right-wing coup of the right wingers in
right. So I'm just excited about what's going on right now in terms of getting ready to talk to you right now. I'm not even going to mess with you. I just want to know what's going on, man. What's happening? Like, they blew it up, man. It was 1/6. They blew it up. Now they're trying to blow it up again. Like, what's going on?
If you didn't mess with me, I would think something's wrong.
It's been nonstop down there.
Yeah, it's been a pretty wild week. I think that Matt Gaetz, who I also refer to as how you say Beelzebub?
Yeah, Beelzebub.
Devil. You sound like a Muslim. He gained nothing but a devil.
That's right.
That guy. And you should see how pale he is. He doesn't even look like he looks like he only comes out at night, like a
vampire.
But anyway, enough of that. I saw this coming a long time ago because when McCarthy made that valiant effort to get there, and it took him 15 times, I knew there was trouble in Little River City, also known as DC. But
all right.
But for him to cut a deal where one person could call for your resignation.
Right.
One member of Congress out of 435. That's a lot of power.
Mm-hmm.
And for him to agree to it,
right,
was the dumbest thing I ever thought. Because I guess he figured once he got in there, he was looking, I think he was looking at it like once he got there, it was going to be like it was with Nancy Pelosi. He ain't Nancy Pelosi. So whatever he was, and I mean, he wanted it so bad. I mean, to be the speaker, he wanted it so bad. And, he, once he became speaker, he took revenge on a couple of members in the Democratic caucus and not allow them to serve on committees. Adam Schiff, who led the intelligence work in the last Congress on Trump and what was going on between Russia and Trump. And Eric Swalwell, who was on the Intelligence Committee and Judiciary, and was a real critic of the president and the Republican Party. And what he did was, and Ilhan Omar, who he did just because she was Muslim.
That's right.
So he took her off committees. But the other two guys were very effective in the Congress prior to investigating, Trump's illegalities along with Russia. So once McCarthy got on, he stripped those three people right away of being allowed to be on committees. And Adam Schiff was the ranking member. He's the highest ranking Democrat on the Intelligence Committee. And if we won the Congress back, he'd be chairman. So he neutralized Eric Swalwell. But something I always live by, and I know it's old and colloquial, but I live by it. Comes around, goes around. And he put those members off. Now he got put off.
Right.
Wow. I was gonna say that leads into a question I had, right? Like some people were like, hey, if you get rid of McCarthy, you may get something worse. They're talking about Trump in there. They're talking about all kinds of stuff that seems a little crazy, right? So,
but we had no choice, John. I mean, the Democrats should come to a Republican who's been like vile and nasty to us every opportunity he gets. We should save him.
So what was the thinking behind that? Like I heard there was like y'all had a meeting, and you thought about it, right? There was
we had a meeting that morning, and somebody smart brought some video of McCarthy on the Sunday shows, and he was talking about all those Democrats. They sell out. They're terrible. They're the problem that we almost shut down the government. No, we weren't. We were the reason it stayed open. Right. We gave him the votes he needed to stay open. Well, we gave it to the American people. We didn't give it to him.
The people, right.
So the government stayed open. Rather than thanking the Democrats and saying, well, they were partners with us and they helped he went on the show like it was our problem. We were the reason it was going to shut down. And when he showed us that, people in the room really didn't like it. That he was kicking our back in after we just saved the country from it shutting down. The 209 votes from the Democrats. Okay? 209 from the Democrats. And so, people were like, okay, like where we might have like said, well, I mean, he's not that bad. And I can't vote with Gates. I mean, that's the thing that killed me, that I was voting with Matt Gaetz on this, and that turned my stomach. But we did what we had to do. I mean, if it was our speaker, they wouldn't save Hakeem Jeffries.
Right.
So why save him? That's their problem. That's their problem in their caucus, that they can't get it together and find somebody that they can have as speaker.
And it also seemed like he couldn't just be trusted, right? Like even if you did save him, there's no guarantee that it would be better or not. Like
he's a liar. He is devoid of the truth, and that's what happened. He tell one side, yeah, okay, and he tell the other side, yeah, okay. It was never no, but he tell everybody what he thought they wanted to hear, and then tried to get by with it, and it just caught up with him.
You're like chicken coming home to roost. Hey, Hakim Green.
Peace.
24 hours. Peace.
That's right.
That's
Yes, sir.
I saw
Newark's
you.
ambassador of hip hop.
Oh, salute. Yes. Peace, everybody. Hey, Donna.
Hey.
Baba, we talked earlier.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Congressman, it was that Sunday, like you said on the talk shows. He was like, "I'll survive this." Matt Gaetz, just bring it to the floor. Let's get it done. And
he said he told him to go for it.
Go for it.
Wow. Like he talked to like I don't understand how he talked with so much swag and he didn't have the votes. Like what's the inside story? Did he think he had the votes?
I don't think he thought it would happen. I think he was looking at it in a really closed-minded. He thought that because he was speaker, he probably could survive this, and that those 8 folks, which they shouldn't be able to do that, but with the Democrats, they became very powerful. So now those 8 people are very powerful, and it's a lesson, and it'll wait to be seen what happened.
That some of y'all were going to come to assist him? You think he thought that?
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't even have like the
but
thing.
He should have kept his mouth quiet Sunday. He might have.
Right. Like the thing I thought, right, was that he had already cut a deal with like 8 or 9 Democrats to be like that, and that would get permission. And it was like a deal that would help, like, some stuff that the left of his party, right, like the mainstream of his party would be down with, like aid to Ukraine or something like that, right? And I thought he was going to use that as a chance to say, hey, I'm bipartisan. Look at what I can do. I'm getting Republicans and Democrats working together, and all the Republicans in swing districts that are voted for Biden, right? Like they're better off. He's got his right wing anyway, but at that point that he establishes a coalition, he can punish his actual enemies. Like the Democrats weren't his enemies. Like, y'all weren't trying to come for his job.
Right.
People in his own caucus were trying to come for his job. I thought he was going to be like, hey, Democrats, look, I'm in a fix. I'm going to give you some of the stuff you want.
Right.
We're going to do this right away.
And I'm
going to punish these people. Like, they're not going to be, I'm going to take them out. I'm going to beat them down as a good speaker should, right?
Hey, John, you know what? I think that...
to vote him out. She didn't vote against him.
John, I think that, what would have been interesting now is, now that I think about it, can you imagine if we knew it was going to work this way, the Democrats stand up with that, motion to vacate. That's what it's called, motion to vacate the speakership.
Right.
And if we knew that would have been smart of us to push the motion. And if we had those 8 Republicans, the Democrats could have put them out. But nobody knew what was going to happen then. But can you imagine if we knew that like we had 8 Republicans that wanted him out, the Democrats could have mounted that. Democrats could have mounted that effort. I'm going to mention that to Hakim when I go back. Wow. But even Hakim was like, Hakim didn't even whip it. What do you call whip it? That means like you're asking your members to vote with you, vote the way you want them to vote. But he didn't whip it. He said vote your conscience.
Right.
Wow.
And he left it at that.
But
then that was before they showed the video of McCarthy kicking our backs in.
So you're saying before the video, Hakeem Jeffrey was just like, vote your conscience.
Right.
What you feel, right? After the video, he didn't whip it. He didn't whip it even then, right?
Nope.
You're saying that, like, so there's really a possibility that if he didn't actively stick a knife in Democrats who helped him, if he didn't actually just slap you in the face, if he didn't actually just go, let me to go out of my way to insult the only people who might help me, he might still be speaker.
He might still be speaker.
Possibly, yes.
Can I ask a question, Congressman? The point that you raised about the Democrats, you know, I guess they knew how the chips were going to roll. Yeah. They could have went and voted him out themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But you know how people say, you know, Democrats just don't have that killer instinct.
Yeah,
they just don't have that thing. It's like the moral compass is more steady on the Democrat side, but that loses the American people at times.
Right. Yeah, I heard that just this week, Hakim. So you're dead on, and that seems to be the feeling of a lot of people. I don't know how to answer that. I mean, I guess that's the case. I mean, you know, we're not vicious, we're not nasty, we're not vile, we're not any of those things. And I guess at some point in time, it's a detriment that you don't operate in that manner.
But I mean, again, you were trying to govern, so
right.
In the midst of all the wonderful things that the Democrats have done over the last 2.5, 3 years, right, and the American public being just in oblivion, like people don't know, or just willfully ignorant. They don't want to know. They don't want to acknowledge. Right. Like there are times when it's time to dunk on these jokers. It's time to hang on the rim.
Yeah.
And like what you just highlighted, maybe might have been one of those times where petty, but it would have got some points with the American people. Like, man, the Democrats are really trying to, you know, go after it.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. And you know, I'm gonna take that message back to Democrats in the caucus, and you know, have them understand, you know, how people are feeling. And Hakeem, that right there is an example of what my job is to listen to you, understand how you feel, and then articulate that back in Washington. That's what a congressman should do, and listens to the people that have voted him into that position. You know, a lot of dudes, and you know, on different levels of government, you know, city, county, state, they want to tell people what to do. I'm telling you how. That's not my job. My job is different. My job is to shut up and listen, and then articulate. It's to listen in the district and then to articulate in Washington. And I think sometimes that's what happens. Like I know in my position, because a lot of people say, well, what does he do? He doesn't do it. I don't know what he does. He doesn't do anything. And then you have to educate them and explain that, no, well, actually, I got $500,000 for the Newark street team that nobody, you know, a group called Eiffel that deals with female women entrepreneurs and helping small businesses, got them $1 million. I mean, so I got to figure out a vehicle to explain the things that I've been doing. The Gateway Project, which might not mean to a lot of people, but people that had to go to New York to work in that tunnel situation. Well, I got $3.2 billion for that project.
And you're talking about just the flood that happened a few weeks ago, and how like so much was flooded in New York.
Yep.
And so that we're seeing the effects of why we need a new bridge, because when it rains a lot, which is going to start to happen more often, like it literally, like did that actually happen? It shut down the train system. It flooded.
Well, I know the New York system it did. Yeah.
Okay.
The subway system was shut down. I'm not sure about Amtrak and the Metro North Railroad, but I mean a lot of that's underground too. So potentially, but I didn't hear as the ranking member on railroads, I didn't hear anything about that, but I did know that the New York subway system was rendered unusable.
So I'm going to ask a really petty question. Did you see McCarthy after the vote? Did he look real sad? Like, did you see him walking out?
No, I saw his press conference after that, and I could tell he was sad.
Hurt,
And then
yeah.
I was surprised. I thought he was going to run again, like, his persistence, but I think he got the message.
He's
and
tired.
he said that he wouldn't run. So
yeah, I saw him afterwards. Like, do you ever see him? Have you seen him since then? Like, just walking around by himself, all lonely or something?
No.
Jonathan.
In fact, I don't know if he stays around, with this embarrassment. He might just decide to go away. That's what Boehner and Ryan did when they pushed him out of speakership. They just resigned. They resigned, So he might resign. I think he's embarrassed.
Just one last thing on this real pettiness. Like, if you see him though, right? Like, if you do see him, you gotta take a selfie. You gotta take a selfie with him. You're like, hey, almost forgot your name, McCarthy. I almost forgot.
Yeah.
Can I get a selfie with you? Like,
you know what I might do?
As a member of Congress.
What I might do next week, and for the folks out there that don't follow me on Instagram or that, is Rep Payne Jr. Rep Donald Payne Jr. One of the two. But I'll probably go to the floor and make some snide comment about him being put out. So.
And you know what, Congressman? I mean, it was so unpredictable because I know when I went to look at the votes and to see that Marjorie Greene was at Matt Gaetz everything, but she didn't vote against him. She didn't vote against him. She was one not, and now she's only pushing. She wants Trump as the speaker, and she named one other person. But it's so weird, and I think he just didn't have the pulse of what was happening in his party and how, because a lot of the, I guess you would say, traditional or old school Republicans are fed up with that.
Well, actually, Donna, he did do well with the Republicans because only 8 of them voted against him.
Right.
So he actually did have the backing of the Republican Party. Just these Freedom Caucus members, which is an iteration of the Tea Party, what's left of the Tea Party, just came out against him, and they got lucky that it was an issue that the Democrats didn't have any real, love for, and to put, McCarthy out. We wanted Hakeem Jeffries when McCarthy won, so we're remaining consistent. We don't want him to be speaker, so we voted against him because we want Hakeem Jeffries, and that's who we will support next week.
You want Hakeem Jeffries to be speaker? Okay.
Go Hakeem.
Go Hakeem. It's a great name. A great name.
Oh yeah,
great man.
Wow.
Great man to have that name.
Great name. Great name.
And Jeffries is a great name too, by the way. If you
Absolutely.
So the only ask is the Democrats is asking for Hakeem. You're going to stay steady on that, Hakeem Jeffries.
Absolutely. No, he's our leader. We have great faith in him, and he's going to be an exceptional speaker when he gets there, and he will get there.
And then the work that you're doing in the transportation, Hoboken did flood, and it was horrible. And this could have been done back in 2008. This train, the check was sent to Christie and everything. And Republicans in their pride and not wanting to get this done is, 15 years.
Christie shut it down, actually.
Right.
He recreated it. I mean, that was the ARC Tunnel project.
Yeah.
And he knocked that down and slapped his name on it, the Gateway Project.
Right.
And so basically it's the same thing, but just, he fuddled with it in a few places to change, better opportunities for him, and then put it back out there. We would be cutting the ribbon right now. The tunnel would be dug and opening right now if Christie hadn't done what he did.
Exactly.
Now, just jumping back to this whole thing that's going on in Congress, what are the rumors about? Like, what do you think is going to happen? Who's going to get it? Do you think they could actually make Trump Speaker of the House? And
no, Trump is supporting Jim Johnson,
okay.
And so I think he's taking himself out of it. But that the Speaker of the House a lot of people don't realize, doesn't have to be in Congress.
Right.
So that's what's going on there. So a few people mentioned Trump, but it looks like Trump doesn't want it. Trump's got bigger fish to fry. He's worried about, he wants to become president so he can pardon himself
Mm-hmm.
from all of this.
Yeah,
So that's the goal. So for him to go into Congress, he wouldn't have that power or ability. So
Now,
he doesn't want to go there.
With the whole Jim Jordan and Steve Scalise thing, right?
Scalise is a better guy. He's he puts on a good front. Like we have a good relationship. Anytime he sees me, he puts his arm around me, asks me how I'm doing, and all. So he's an approachable guy. There was an issue that we had with him, I guess back in 2013, 14, or 15, where there was a story that came up where he had called or used the word nigger somewhere. And so, tensions got pretty tight in the Congress, and he denied it. And Cedric Richmond from New Orleans kind of came to his aid, because he's from Louisiana as well. So, not Hakeem. Cedric kind of quelled the anger in the Black Caucus, like kind of standing up for him. So, but I never forgot it. So, I kind of always look at him like, out the side of my eye, But I think Scalise would be better for the Congress than Jim Jordan, because at least Scalise, is trying to work with the Democrats to the extent that he will or can, and he's approachable. So
and Jordan's trying to do impeachment, and he seems like he's part of that crazy caucus.
Oh yeah, he's a Trumpite.
And again, this is just, I have no idea what the answer would be, because there are a lot of intricacies to this. Is there any chance of Democrats doing a kind of like a throw behind Scalise, as opposed to like in the way of just trying to avoid the catastrophe, right? Like as in the Ukraine funding, the hearings for the Biden impeachment hearings, the level of which with Jim Jordan, it seems like nothing will get done. There's a possible, like the shutdown's going to happen. They might default on the debt the next time that comes up. Like, well, I don't think that comes up until after 2024. But it just seems like that Jim Jordan is like one of those people who just doesn't deal in reality, and
he doesn't deserve the job either. He doesn't deserve the job. But what I think will happen is probably going to be a long process again, because nobody's going to have 218 in the beginning. It's going to be one of those exercises where people are going to go like 5, 6, 7 times and then maybe drop out, or they try to come together with one candidate. But I think it could be as lengthy as last time, with somebody getting the 218. And those things that you're talking about, John, that could potentially happen will probably be discussions in the caucus prior to the vote. So if somebody comes along with that strategy, then that'll be that. But we haven't discussed anything to this point.
And do you think that there's any possibility of peeling off like 5 Republicans, like the ones who are in Biden districts, the ones who are like more middle of the road, and who are like, yo, this is crazy, but would not like there are a series of Democrats are in districts that Biden actually won, right? Do you think there's any chance of flipping some of those and having Hakeem Jeffries as speaker?
Right.
It's going to be difficult to get Jeffries to the speakership. The Republicans are not going to vote for a Democrat.
Has it ever happened?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
And in terms of Marjorie Taylor Greene, Marjorie Taylor Greene started out with those wackos, but she has come to gain some power with McCarthy. In fact, In fact, McCarthy really didn't do much without Marjorie Taylor Greene telling him what to do. So she was she had gained a lot of power, and so she kind of started to side with McCarthy because she had more power there than she did with the others. So
now, I was going to say, do you think she loses the power that she gained in this?
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're not going to look at bringing her back after she did that.
Oh, fair enough, because she kind of seemed to have left that caucus and sided with McCarthy more.
Right.
Interesting, right? And maybe that's what he thought. He thought maybe he peeled off enough of that caucus to be able to, bought off enough. He probably thought Marjorie Taylor Greene had more power than she actually did.
Well, he's the one that gave her the power, based on doing her bidding. So
no,
maybe he thought that she can control those 8.
Right, like some of the other 8, right? Yeah.
No, those eight are out there, man. They just out there. They don't care. It's anything but McCarthy. They didn't care.
Wow.
And like I said, I think that went back to January 20th when they cut the deal. Well, January 2nd, we were sworn in 2nd. That he thought he could survive that. I mean, to go from having 15 people bring you up to vacate to one person,
right?
That's crazy.
Right.
And the way things were going, Gates didn't like him anyway. Didn't really want him as speaker. It was just a matter of time when Gates did this.
Right.
Whenever I think if Gates said now because McCarthy didn't give them what they wanted, that's why he pulled the trigger. He lied to them. He didn't follow through on what they wanted.
Right.
I think if McCarthy had given them everything they wanted, he would have done it anyway because now they got what they want and they don't need him.
Right.
They'd have found
either way, the dude was going to do him.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's crazy. I mean, you give that much power to any one person that can cut your throat. Like, hey, listen, if you don't do what I want to have the power to cut your throat. Okay, all right.
Here's the knife. Take this knife.
Yeah, right. Here's the knife. Crazy.
And what does that put Gates at? Do you think he's going to rise as a rising star or anything in their party?
No, everybody hates him.
Everybody hates him. So
the Democrats hate him. The Republicans now hate him. I mean, he's a man. He's a man on an island alone. If there's not anything he can affect with those other 7 people. I mean, he's
I was going to ask that, right? Like, what is the relationship between him and the rest of the? Because apparently, McCarthy did get an overwhelming majority of the Republicans to be like, "Don't do this."
Right.
What's going on with the Republicans, and how do they feel about Matt Gaetz having that much power?
They don't like it, and I think the only thing that allows them to do that is their fear of Trump. Or being against Trump. That's what most of this is about. Yeah. Because if you're in the Republican caucus and you don't realize that that 35% that are for diehard Trump folks can swing any election, and all you need for Trump to do is say you shouldn't be in Congress anymore, and it's happened to a few people. So everybody's scared. They're all scared of the MAGA, the MAGA majority, and what they could potentially do to them in a primary. If they get primary, and those that MAGA party is strong in your district, you're hit. You're done. And that's what they're all fearful of, that MAGA majority.
So really, you're like, this is really about fear, and because I keep forgetting that, I close to 70% of Republicans, like the Washington Post reported this about 2 years ago, 70% of Republicans think that the election was stolen.
Yeah,
and they really sincerely believe that Trump actually won the election, and that Biden stole the election,
and that shows the power of Trump. because Trump's the only one that was spewing that. So that 70% is going by what Trump says. So that says a lot too about the power that he has in the party. That 70% you're talking about all heard it from Trump.
And I think that it's wild, right? Because it's like they heard it from Trump and then Trump's voice, right? How it got carried on Fox, how it got carried on all these right-wing media things when they were literally like all these media places for the right wing were fighting to keep Trump voters, right? Like, so they're amplifying it almost like in a circle
Right.
for months that led to 1-6 and
Yeah,
where
but
we
look what happened to Fox. And they got another suit coming, Dominion, that wants even more money than the other group got.
Okay.
So Fox paid out that crazy lawsuit, and the Dominion people are coming right behind that with a larger number. They're going to basically use the information that allowed the other group, I can't think of their names, win that lawsuit against Fox. Fox is almost looking to get out of that far right television type stuff. So it's really incredible.
So I'm not sure about the next one, but I think that they paid out Dominion close to $1 billion.
Dominion. All right.
But,
yeah, there's a second one.
Was it the New York? Is it the New York City Pension Fund?
No. It's another company.
Okay.
That's following Dominion. Yeah, I'm sorry. Dominion was the group that won.
One close to $1 billion. All right, I'll try to look that up.
Okay.
Because I know there's something else coming up as well. There might be multiple ones, right? Like coming up as well. But Hakim Green, you had a question.
Get your audio.
Hold on.
You're mute.
I always mute everyone. Yeah. Whenever you're not talking, always just mute yourself so that. Yep.
So Trump represents for a lot of folks the pushback to the global agenda, to the globalist Illuminati deep state agenda.
Yes.
So as much as it's been, since he's been the president in 2016, it's really something that's been growing for like 30, 40 years. And I don't know where they get this from, that this guy of all people is an enemy to the international bankers.
Right.
But that's what they believe. So the whole, Biden stole the election is all tied to the other conspiracy theories, the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories. So you got these echo chambers, there's Fox News, but then it's, these other right-wing uber conservative platforms, be it on social media or cable TV, where they just reiterate and repeat these conspiracy theories.
Right.
And, they just think Trump he's Neo for them.
Absolutely. You know what Trump did? Trump gave them license to say what they wanted to say for that 40, 50 years. Mm-hmm. You said 30, 40. I said 40, 50. Mm-hmm. Or as long as we have gained some civil rights in this country.
Everybody there? We lost Congressman?
Yeah, we lost the Congressman.
We lost the Congressman.
Yes, we just lost the Congressman, but the company that he's talking about is called Smartmatic. And Fox is trying to do everything to fight that lawsuit. I just looked at the Hill yesterday. It says Fox News asks judge to compel Soros to produce documents as part of Smartmatic lawsuit, right? So apparently that Smartmatic vote, Smartmatic is another company that Congressman Payne was talking about. The Congressman, I think the company you were talking about is Smartmatic.
Yes, that's it.
And that lawsuit, I just looked at something about a day ago, and they're coming at Fox News for over $2 billion.
Right. Yeah, that's the one, Smartmatic. That's right. It. Thank you.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So Hakeem, back to your. I'm sorry, my iPad died. I had it plugged in, but it died anyway. So he really became the voice of all of these folks that are anti-black, woke, left, and all of that. But because there was so much pressure from the population in the world that thought that people should have civil rights and opportunities like other groups have, he came along and said, "No, you don't have to do that. You mean I can use the word nigger? Sure, we're using it with pride. You don't have to do that."
Wow.
And there's a backlash to Obama too. The pendulum swung all the way left to elect a black man. So now what happened is swung all the way back to a neo-fascist.
I'm back. That's right.
So that's basically what is happening. This is actually, I kind of tell a little joke every once in a while when I'm, around people that would get it. I say, this is all Obama's fault. This is all Obama's fault because, Donald Trump would have never been able to rise had we not had a black president. Because this is the backlash, this is the fear, this is the like, oh no, hell no, that's too far. That's the pendulum is swung all the way back to the right, and that's why we have Trump. But he's their golden boy. He's like, when they call you racist, damn right, wear it with pride. Say what you mean I could tell them that I really don't like blacks in my neighborhood? Absolutely. You tell them. You tell them what's on your mind. And he's giving them such a freedom that's what you're seeing the ramifications of all of that. That's where this country is right now. Trump is giving them license to do and say whatever the hell they want, and they're taking advantage of it because it's so
Exactly right.
relieving for them that they don't have to like disagree with all this stuff, but keep it to themselves because they would be ostracized. Now, say what you want. This is America. You can say what you want.
This is
and a lot of them are going back to nigger.
Wow. Fair. Right. Where do you see has this affected the way that you're looking at what you can do within Congress in the future? It's interesting because years ago, when All Politics Are Local first really started, right? Like your father was on, and it was about the Tea Party, and he talked about, and Ed talks about this too. He talks about when he said the Tea Party is crazy. They're a different breed, right? And he talked about when they first took control of Congress, I believe probably 2010, right? And talked about that it was wild. Like he was like, no, this is real, right? And it seemed like that was the beginning, the roots of what we're talking about that's in full swing right now. I think probably the figure that scared me more than not scared me, but like gave me pause was that thing I talked about before, right? Like 7-0, like according to the Washington Post study that they did about 2 years ago, 70, 70% of all Republicans actually believe, like they really believe that the election was stolen.
Right.
Like they're really down. And the thing that's so like wild is because if you really believe that the election was stolen, right? Culturally, the Declaration of Independence is a declaration of war, right? It's the justification of political violence. It says that if the government doesn't do certain things, or if it does certain things that violate your freedom, then you can kill people, right? I mean, that's the Declaration of Independence. It is a justification of political violence because it is a justification of revolution. And if 70% believe the election was stolen, that's a lot of people feeling they're justified to kill their enemies.
That, you know what, that's pretty profound, John. That's very profound.
Mm-hmm.
You just said, because the Declaration of Independence was about saying no more from you, you know, British, and we're going to do our own thing. And if you don't let us, we're going to kill you. So come on over here. We got something for you.
Right.
Yeah, that was, you know, absolutely. I never looked at it that way before, but you're dead. You're head on. You're dead. You hit the nail on the head, brother.
I got a lot of that from 1-6, right? Because they call themselves patriots. They were talking about, in addition to the white supremacy stuff they were talking about, they were also talking about, like, we need a revolution. They call themselves the 1776 Committee, right?
Right.
Like they keep looking at themselves as revolutionaries, and it seems like these are hardcore justifications that I have never in the last few years. Before the last few years, I've never heard actual talk of civil war being talked about so openly in mainstream, like on mainstream news programs, right?
Okay.
Like on mainstream show, like people are literally talking about, like, they're taking polls about, do you think that there's actually going to be another civil war? And too many people are being like, yeah, right? Like the levels of random violence that people feel that they are justified in doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't help but think that number, that 70%, that means if you see 10 Republicans, 7, right, that inside there's something that can connect with our founding documents that say we need to blow it up.
Right.
Like we're justified in actually killing our opponents.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that includes, and 1-6 we saw, because that includes, like, members of Congress, right? That includes police officers. That includes
vice president,
military, right? That includes Mike Pence.
Right.
It includes Mike Pence, right?
Which is the most amazing thing, you know, and it shows you how quickly, you know, Donald Trump will turn on you. You know, that man did everything Donald Trump did. Donald Trump had a water bottle, took a sip. Pence picked up his water bottle, took a sip. Trump laid it on the floor. That boy laid his bottle right on the floor. He was a robot for Trump. But the minute he didn't do one thing he wanted him to do, hang Mike Pence.
Literally.
Right.
They were fine that morning. It wasn't anything that had come up that was bubbling over 3 or 4 weeks where he finally said kill Mike Pence. That happened in like an hour and a half. He didn't do what he wanted to do. Kill that sucker.
Right.
Hang him.
Right. Like a mafia don. Right.
If you can get your hands on him, get a rope and hang him.
Yeah.
But that shows you the strength of Trump. Like you keep saying, that 7-0, that 7-0 came out of his mouth. He was the one saying that it was rigged. He's the one that's saying that they stole it. Mm-hmm. And 70% of people followed what he said. Now that's the scary part.
Quick, Steve Bannon. How important is he still to all this mess?
I don't know. He's gone undercover. You know, he has a blog or something where he is still talking junk. But I don't hear him.
I had MSNBC on yesterday, but didn't get a chance to really dig into it. But they did a article on his relationship now to Matt Gaetz, and they got something going on.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, like,
I don't know what it was about.
Because Bannon is still a Trump loyalist.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Gaetz is Trump's entree to the Congress. So that would make sense.
Yeah, but Bannon is more loyal to his law degree because he sure enough got up there and said that there was no justification, So when it came down to him having to testify and he could not agree with everything that Trump was saying because he knew that he was held to a higher standard because of that law degree and because of, him being when you're a lawyer, you are of the court. You're
Right.
you're a part of. So he had to stand on the truth, so to
Right.
speak. And so at some point he had to come and say no. He fabricated a lot of it.
Right. Yeah. Bannon's not stupid.
Right.
So even when they were having the committee hearing on trying to impeach Biden, and all three of the Republican witnesses said that there's no evidence of any criminal wrongdoing that rises to impeachment of Joe Biden. And they had their super witness, this Professor Turley, who is a law professor, who they use quite a deal. And he got on, and he was their first witness. And Bannon was tweeting out, he said, like, well, I mean, the way this has started out, maybe we should have said Professor Turley is a maybe for the panel. Because none of them, the three people, didn't say anything about Joe Biden or any criminality. There was no evidence. So why are we here? This is the impeachment of Joe Biden, not of his son, Hunter. This is the impeachment of Joe Biden. And Hunter Biden's name was brought up more than the president. Right. So, why are we here? It was a sheer embarrassment for the Republicans.
But it's for their base, though, because this is just what I'm seeing on social media. They use that just to keep the Biden's he's in Ukraine, Biden's nepotism with his son,
right?
Biden's corrupt. They just use it to fuel the idea that President Biden is a corrupt president,
right?
Even though they have no.
I suggest you go on social media and see Mr. Frost, Maxwell Frost from Florida, Jasmine Crockett from Texas, and Ocasio AOC from New York.
And that's what I was going to ask you about, Congressman. Representative Crockett. She's a woo. Do you have the opportunity to meet with her?
Oh yeah. We're together every day.
Yeah, because
I tell her, I say, you keep me entertained on Instagram. That's
get it in, boy. I'm always sharing her stuff. I'm with her. I'm with her.
At the panel hearing, she's ready. She stays on fire and she's on point. Yeah. Well, we might have to bring you back this month because we wanted you to tell us about your panel. We wanted to talk to you a little bit about the panel at the ALC.
Oh yeah.
DJ Rhino at your event, and how was the cruise? I think this is the first year you put the cruise back on. The cruise came back, since COVID this year.
Right.
So,
where's Rhino? Get Rhino up here.
We tried to get him on. He just couldn't be there tonight. But
okay.
DJing our event, the event tomorrow at Science High School, right? Like there's the tribute to Amiri Baraka. 3 panels are going on, and that's all going to be good.
Yeah, no, Rhino did a great job as usual. We had a successful event called the New Party.
Right.
Cedric Richmond and I from Louisiana, he's gone now, but we were kind of like tired of the other parties that they were having. And we came up with, and said, we should do something. And he was like, yeah. And so he was New Orleans and I'm New Jersey. So we called it the New Party.
Okay.
And, we've been trying to, give people an alternative and have something that's really big and fun. And it's really turned out to be great. We have it in Class A1 venues. Last year, we had at the Capital One Arena, is where they play, the hockey and NBA basketball. We had that whole facility for the party. And then this year, which was really nice, which I always wanted to do, we had it at the train station, at Union Station.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. And so I got that idea. Clinton, when he was elected, his first ball he used the whole train station. And if you ever look up at that ceiling, I mean, it's just beautiful.
Beautiful.
And so it really makes a nice backdrop. for the party, and I mean it was slamming this year at the train station. So yeah, we'll have to do all that next month. But I also wanted to bring on I know you remember Dr. Faccaretti from Mississippi that talks about the amputations and the work that I'm working on. That's my major bill right now in Congress, to reduce the amputations in the African American community and across the country.
Right.
You know, rural areas have the same problems that the African American populations have.
That's true.
So I'm working to stem the tide of unnecessary amputations in the country.
Yeah, I had a
and let me say one other thing, Donna. Hakeem, that's to my point about people not knowing what I do. My stuff it's important and it goes to our community, but it's not something that's glitzy and glamoury, you know, that people, oh, Payne, man, yeah, he stopped the 1-6 convention in January. You know, it's not, a lot of the things that I do are down to, you know, down in the community on the ground. Like I said, I get the Newark Street team doing a great job. I got them $500,000 to keep doing their work. And those are the kinds of things that I do. Yeah. So they're not necessarily always heralded in, you know, in the media and social media and all that.
Congressman, it should be because it's important work and it's great work. But also, you know, what I get from the, you know, contrarians, people who are on the fence, they call themselves independent. They say they don't vote for, you know, either party, but when you don't vote, you've actually voted for the other party.
Exactly.
So their complaint is, well, what are they doing for black people? They're not doing anything for black people. And I'm like, you know, it's about what's going on the local level, but it's having support federal, state, local, all the way down. And we say, you know, what are we doing for black people when we understand the rates of diabetes in our community and how that affects us with the amputee issue, the rate of amputee procedures. Like that's stuff that our people need to know, because my grandmother is and my grandfather and I am. It's an immediate thing. It's not somebody in another country somewhere who's getting a benefit. No, we're getting benefited. Right. So they need to know that.
Absolutely. And we had a young lady from the district call you, Congressman Payne, because somewhere between COVID and something happened that she stopped getting her assistance, and she went into Clara, Mass, and the first thing they started talking to her was about amputating her toes, and she called your office and there was some relief. So yeah, people, and it's hard because people don't want to tell those stories because they're so personal, and somebody who went from a thriving life to not walking, you know, it's hard for them to tell. So when you get people who are willing to testify about, you know, how they were almost on the cutting table and your office stepped in and now they still have all 10 of their toes, that's big, you know.
Yeah, but nobody ever hears about that. You know, nobody ever knows, you know, the things that I'm doing on the ground. I pride myself on my constituent service, and you know, I'll put my staff up next to anyone with that respect. That's the mantra in my office. You know, I do the speeches and I go and speak to people and do all the things that I'm supposed to do. But my constituent service is what is important to me, and I try to do everything I can. So, you know, it's a building process for me. It's almost kind of word of mouth. So the more I do in the community, the more people will get to understand, you know, like their sister, oh no, you know, he helped me get my apartment back. Or no, you know, he helped me. So it's unfortunate, but that's the way it is for me. It looks like it's got to be word of mouth and the number of people that I help spread the word. But I'm going to keep doing what I do. So that's it.
Okay. Well, we will continue next month. It seems like the Payne hour goes so quick. We need a Payne.
I know, right?
We just need a Payne 3 hours.
I remember when I was scared to come on here.
I don't remember that.
And I ain't had nothing to do with that one.
It seems like you've been comfortable since day one. At least you gave that.
No, Zay, by the time I got on here, we were cool.
That's cool.
Nothing. Jonathan is your altar. He knows how to get you going. We need to
talk to too. I'm a little concerned about what I'm hearing about the council meetings and them arresting people and all of that.
Let's not even go there right now.
I mean, you know, I sat in that seat and I didn't have to arrest anyone. I mean,
What happened?
it's your time to listen to the people. So I mean, you know, it's called the hearing of citizens. So sit there, shut up, and listen.
The congressman has spoke, and we will get that word back real quick. Hearing of citizens, sit there, listen, and shut up. I got it.
And I saw Zayid cringe, but I think there may be a lot going on. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I saw you like,
it's 9 o'clock.
Right.
You're like, okay, well,
yeah, hey, Zay, don't start it now. They don't start now. Well, no, we need to tackle that. But next month I'm going to bring Dr. Faccaretti with me, and we can talk about that other stuff.
And Congressman, maybe in the 10th congressional district, you can probably come in and pull all your council people in and have a talk, because you have sat in several seats from I want to say from district, from committeemen all the way, from every, to the commissioner, to the council person, and you can sit and you can help people understand that, it's frustrating, but you're not there to be frustrated. You're there to listen and to think of solutions. So that would probably be a good 10th congressional district meeting.
Yeah, that might work. And I appreciate that, Donna. Yeah, because I've been a district leader, I've been a council person, I've been a county committee person, and had great opportunities to learn at every level and engage the community in things that are important to them. So that might work.
Right. I have to do a 10th congressional meeting. Well,
how come you didn't make it to ALC with your group?
We will be there next year. Guess who else will be there next year?
Who?
Guess who else will be there next year?
Who?
All Politics are Local. We will be streaming live from DC. That's right. I have to put the budget together, and we will be there starting on Monday. We will set up with our team, and we are going to be in the place.
All right. And I'll see.
And look at Jonathan Austin trying to look like he's frozen. Yeah.
Looking at the clock.
I'll set up.
I was actually looking for something, and I was supposed to give Donna a long time ago.
Okay, I know you. I got you. But go ahead.
And Donna, what I could probably do is help facilitate making sure some members come by there.
All right, you see that? We're ready. We will be there. We're gonna get there 2 days early.
On location.
All right,
we
that's
will
great.
Be on location.
That is great.
Okay.
All right. Good people.
All right.
Well, great weekend, everybody.
All right, have a great weekend. And Congressman, if you're in Newark right now, come by Science Park High School tomorrow. The things are going on at 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and at 2 o'clock. And Zayid is going to be moderating the first forum. That's on, you got money for the organizations that are doing anti-violence work. And that first forum is about reimagining public safety and public health, right? The second forum is at 12 o'clock because it's going to be about hip hop. Mysonne is going to be on that one. And the third one is about education that starts at 2. That's going to be a great forum as well. I'm actually moderating that forum. So if you're around,
what? Yeah, and unfortunately, I might as well let you know now. I probably won't be able to get there because that's my dialysis time. So
okay, fair enough.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But right. I wish I looked at trying to move it, but they couldn't accommodate me any other time. So
much respect, and also much respect on the the disclosure about having diabetes, because I think really so many of our community I think appreciates that, because there's so many of us who are going through that. So
that's right.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the best thing for a politician to do to say that they're sick, but I think it helps more people than it will harm me. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's not about me. It's about the community and them understanding. So, definitely on the next show with Dr. Pacaretti, I'll lay my whole history out with the conditions and illnesses that I'm suffering from.
Okay. All right. Now,
All right.
And much appreciated. So,
all right then.
Thank you for
peace.
Peace.
All that.
All right.
Until next week, all politics are local.
By the way, just one of this. A quick shout out. I just want to shout out the immortal Fannie Lou Hamer. It's her birthday.
Happy birthday.
It's Mitty Jr.'s birthday.
Okay.
Fannie Lou, I want to lift her up, not just because what we know her for, but this is also Breast Cancer Awareness Month. She ultimately left us for the land of the ancestors behind breast cancer. Something else we don't.
Wow.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, I just want to lift that up.
All right. Thank you. And
I'm doing and on that point, I'm doing a forum on breast cancer. So maybe I'll shoot that information to all politics is local, and then you could blast it out on your next show.
Absolutely.
When are you doing it?
Absolutely.
And since they're not, and I and Fannie Lou Hamer share the same birthday, so
Hey, happy birthday, Donna!
Happy birthday, Donna!
That's
Happy
right.
birthday!
Finally,
Donna,
21.
how does it feel to be 31?
21.
21. Add on years, John.
Oh, my bad.
You know what? It feels good. It feels good. I would never go back to 21 or 31 unless I could take my wisdom with me.
Fair enough.
That's
There
right.
you go.
Fair enough.
All right.
All right.
Take care.
Until next week.
No. See you later.
Next week, and you don't stop.